Right, this is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight with me and Monty. This is going to be another. Some would say, I think people think it's about best family shows. Some say the two-man episodes are the best ones because there's no like awkward person there. We don't have to cater to them. We just have the rapport from years and years. But if you enjoy the report of me and Monty, and let's say in CSGO you were a fan of me and Richard Lewis on By the Numbers, and you've always thought, I like it on the Four Horsemen, but there's always that fourth person, isn't it? And sometimes Storage attacks them. It turns out he was actually right, but that's the thing about being a crusader, you know, sometimes viewed as a heretic. You would think to yourself, imagine if all three of them could talk about more things I enjoy. Like, for example, who doesn't enjoy movies, cinema, film, as we call it in the UK? Well, if you enjoy Richard Lewis, Monty, Thorin, cinema and film, then I've got something for you. It's called Foreplay. And that's not just me teasing the shit out of you right now, getting you hard as a motherfucker, ready for some fucking action. Because here's the thing, we're going to be doing a movie show on the LFN Culture channel. That's right. Go and subscribe now. Why would you want to miss out? All the cool kids are going to be watching it. And on this particular series, Foreplay, as the name suggests, it's going to be a movie series where we take a genre or a subgenre and we pick 4 movies. We're even going to have a little theme where it'll be like, one will be like a famous one a little bit less famous, one a bit more out there than one like quite obscure. Because by the way, me and Richard Lewis have watched a bazillion movies. Monty has his own interests. And the point is, we're going to watch the movie before the episode. And then we're going to it's not going to be a review. It's more going to be like, we just talk like we would about any topic about that movie. It can be whatever angle, it can be the direction, the theme, the plot, arguing about whether it's good. Basically, think of that like James Bond thing we did the other week in the questions at the end. It'll be a bit like that, but with Richard Lewis involved and have his own opinions. So it'll be coming up this week. I'll wait for you to see the first episode, but I'd just get in there, get subscribed so that you get it into your notification box, in the algo, etc.
That's right. And subscribe here as well. You guys did a great job. If you still haven't subscribed to our channels, what are you doing, man?
And give us Twitch Prime. Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. And sign up for Discord so you can ask questions. You know, become a Discord subscriber. Support the content. But yeah, the Last Free Nation Culture channel also had Nerd Legion going on there. Unfortunately, as we've discovered, most modern television is quite bad. So instead of focusing on me and Doa railing against terrible things, you can focus on me, Thorin, and Richard talking about things that we actually enjoy.
Exactly. Yes.
And the first topic, or the first genre, is going to be cosmic horror, guys. So that'll be fun. You'll see more announcements across social media, but we also have separate LFN Culture social media. So follow that as well.
You know, when you say that, that's one thing that's always annoyed me is one, right, if you just take all the negative / drama / critical stuff out, Monty, I still have more content than anyone in the history of esports. So I've always thought people just attract what they want. So they know when they go, all you do is tweet negative. No, you know, you only come and read my negative tweets. You don't watch the bazillion videos I've put on the internet with all the tags and all the algo. It's all connected. Like, you can watch my Twitter feed every day. I'm just spamming content. You don't watch that. But I do agree, a lot of times in esports now, we're very critical. Not least because, one, League of Legends as a game has been incredibly mismanaged. Like, I always think to myself, mate, think about, like, the worst is actually if you're Korean or Chinese. Think about the days when there were 3 slots for Worlds. So if you're in the 4th or 5th best team your whole career in the country of South Korea, you just don't get to play. You just get to sit back at home and watch like some dickhead from Clutch Gaming go 0-6 and go, the fuck, I can't even play there. Then Riot goes, sorry, we've got our own version of Frostgorin saying there's too many Koreans in this tournament. Meanwhile, if you're in CSGO, by the way, if you're European, you only have to be in something like the top 18 fucking teams. You probably go to the major. You can actually be like the 18th best team in our region. It's like, see you at the World Championship for your 4th time. Like, this is fucking sick. So I have to say, the problem is that mixed with the corruption, mixed with people literally destroying the health of players, means it's hard not to be critical because those are important things. Like, I don't know if this is a news flash, but it's more important if a player is medically malnourished than whether or not, like, maybe should have been his Jinx angle on the draft. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's you that have got the fucking priority. It's like I always say about that thing with Riot. You've got a hate boner for Riot. Why don't you? At this point in 2023, why don't you have a hate boner? What would it take? I mean, I said this about the EG people. They never ever tweeted ever about what they did, Monty. It's like, for real, I'm not joking. At this point, my next question would be, would he have to be dead? Would that guy have actually had to die before, like, a tweet would come out, some acknowledgement? Like, the esports scene is just fucking rotten. It's why we end every fucking episode of Four Horsemen. Like, esports must die, essentially. It must. It absolutely must. And I'm here. I brought it into this fucking world, and I'll take it out. That's an old school thing that your dad used to say if you don't know back in the day.
Thorin, I've asked some people, too, who, what would it take for them to actually talk about the EG issue publicly? I've said, these are people certainly with things to lose from within the League of Legends scene who work, closely with Riot. But basically, some of the answers I've gotten have been completely ridiculous, such as, well, I'm waiting for Riot to finish their investigation, which is like, come on. Like, what do you think is going to happen here in this investigation? So you can't say anything.
The Warren Commission of League of Legends, of course.
Yeah, yeah. You can't say anything because you're waiting for Riot to decide that EG did nothing wrong. Because if they decide EG did something very wrong, it would engender a huge wave of bad publicity. So of course they're just trying to bury it.
Remember when everyone waited for G2 before they got that VCT slot taken valid? They waited for like the official investigation. That happened, and it never happened. It was just the same day. Care about the V-Sports, cancel him, get the pitchforks. What a ridiculous industry. It's so stupid, isn't it? It's just so stupid. That's why what I do is I just flip it to comedy and make it funny, because the actual aspect is tragedy. This is just fucking tragedy all day long in this industry, boys.
Yeah, and the other thing I love is, we can't name Nicole LaPointe Jameson, even though two reporters, yourself and Richard Lewis, who have won a combined 3 esports journalists of the year, have basically shown as much as can be shown without disclosing sources that she was the source of all of these issues. So, like, what does it take at a certain point? You have to have an official investigation from Riot.
Must be the Lena angle. She has to accidentally leave the stream on and just go like, remember that time I just fucked that Danny guy over completely, wrecked his life, and then read out all the rest of all things in our article. Then I was saying into like some guys, that was like a mirror. That actually made me believe in manifestation. I think our mind, not spoiler, I can't, here's the thing, Marty, if this is the movie Scanners, I imagine our minds are more powerful than double-lifted leaders. So we obviously overpowered reality itself and tapped into the world soul, the monad, and made a manifestation of what we wanted to happen just occurred in life. Like, essentially, we tapped in, the Lenovo just activated, turned up the volume and fucking caught the whole thing. By the way, I've always thought that was the craziest detail people miss, Monty. She's not like right behind his mic. Like, on our mics, you always say, like, can you hear that in the background? It's like a dog. And then you're always like, nah, you can't pick it up on the mic. Dude, somehow their mic setup was like, she could be in the other room and you could just hear her crystal clear, like on the phone. That was almost like fake. Like, I think that was like one of those like TikTok skits where it's like, they're really badly acted. Like, what the hell? You did that? And you would have thought that was real. So that's not going to happen again, is it, guys? We're not going to get that from Nicole LaPointe Jameson. I mean, I already had loads of internal documents, but like, and the problem with those ones is I'm always very wary about putting like a screenshot in case it shows something that gets somebody in trouble, or there's 4 people in that chat. You've got to be really careful with that stuff, unfortunately.
I mean, I'm just impressed by the Lenovo technology that the internal mic on a computer can be good enough to pick it up. It's just really impressive, actually. But yeah, I do agree with your assessment about, the negativity around this stuff. It's also, I mean, obviously, because the reason why the negativity exists is because no one else can actually be negative. So we look very negative in comparison.
There's another thing. How many times do we have people bringing these fucking stories to us? That's the other thing. I'm just sat here, by the way, not ever looking into any stories in League of Legends. And what happens is, because I did one video about EG being stupid in CSGO, now someone comes to me in League of Legends. Then they go, oh, by the way, I saw your story with the other guy. Like, here's more info. Like, they're giving me this info. That's where it's all coming from. I don't get it, mate, because no one would ever say it to any other job. Like, imagine that guy, fucking Vincent Hanna from Heat, where he's like a homicide and like crime detective. Someone just going, it's a bit negative, isn't it? It's just all bloody crimes for you and like heists and stuff. Like, what's the cool things, like getting the cat out of a tree? Like, bro, I'm literally on the homicide division. What do you want? Like, fucking, yeah, it's pretty negative. It's like that scene where he goes, you want me to tell you about my day, honey? About how some crackhead put a fucking baby into a microwave? You want to hear about my day, honey? Like, fucking hell, all right. There you go. You're the crazy ex-wife in that movie, fans at home. Straight Fire movie, by the way. But look that one up. That could be on popular one day. If we ever do heists or crime movies or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Undoubtedly. One of the all-time great crime movies. All right. So I thought we could kick off this conversation with a discussion about Faker's legacy, because interestingly,
I'm a C in this case, but yeah, keep going. I'm a C. There you
go. Interestingly, we have a very unique window into a what if universe, which is what if Faker's teammates that he went to multiple international tournament finals with and 3 consecutive LCK finals had to play without him. What would that look like? And the answer is extremely fucking bad. So, there aren't that many times, I think, in a player's career outside of injury where you get these kind of unique windows into what the team dynamic is, and especially in an esport, a team-based esport, where shot calling is so important, right? And play strategy is so important. And that's the thing, is because you don't have coaches in the game of League of Legends Live, it is up to the players to have that level of strategic planning and communication themselves. So it's very unlike traditional sports in that sense. Because most traditional sports, either you can't shot call in the same way you can in League of Legends because you're on the opposite side of a field or a court from each other, and any communication that you do is not private, right? The other team can hear you. That's why you have to use coded signals. Or there are coaches like in football, American football, that are there between every play, even have radios into certain players' helmets in order to help assess the situation. Now, obviously, the players still do have agency, which is why players like Peyton Manning were so impressive. But at the end of the day, like, esports is still much more communication based during the game than most other sports. And I think we're seeing Faker's effect in that aspect, which probably most of us underrated.
We're all looking at him as a mid laner, individual player. We could all see that, like, the Chovies of the world, the scouts of the world, left him in the dust years ago, and he's not at that level. In fact, even in Korea, people like BDD are better. But what we're learning, like your analogy there, Monty, is not Peyton Manning, Faker is like Drew Brees at the end. Yeah, his arm was gone. Yeah, he was getting injured. But, like, he obviously knew how to run the offense. He knew how to pass the ball to Alvin Kamara and go, now I'm going to get out of the way. It wasn't like the old days where he fired the rocket. Like, in this analogy, Faker knew how to potentially roam for top with Zeus, how to team fight. Probably, if you look at the shot call, when not to team fight. That was the thing I always found impressive last year. They had that, like, counter meta where their style was like, we don't engage, which was very rare, actually. Most teams just opted into those fights, like you saw at MSI. So what you see here is, one, Faker's actual shot calling impact on the game and what he did. Like, maybe he even knew he would get ganked and all that sort of shit. Maybe he's drawing pressure. And then the other thing to me is, as far as I can tell, we talked about it many times on this show, ever since Diney, that guy, got kicked out the team, who had all those underwhelming results in all his teams, ever since he got booted out, they had Polt come in, who I noticed the T1 fans got fired immediately. As far as I can tell, the results are the same when Polt was fired, by the way, you idiots. He wasn't the guy doing tactics. He was there to be like a head coach. From that moment on, it really just seems like Faker is the coach as well, like we talked about in the past. Because the other people who came in, the style never changed, the way they played never changed, it was the same players. And you look now, like I joked on Best Damn League Show, which is out on this channel, by the way. I joked with Dom, because obviously he's loving the downfall of T1. It's like, that's how you know Bengi even knows he's a fraud. Because when he saw the writing on the wall, he was like, I'm getting out of here before it actually, like, burns down around me. Like, if I go now, there'll be like a sub coach. Poor Tom, of course, has to take the beating again. The whipping boy of fucking, if you know what a whipping boy is, look that up. That's an amazing analogy. The whipping boy of T1 has to come in, and he's going to be the one blamed when they don't make worlds.
I just love the fact that Tom was basically Bengi's substitute jungler in 2015, and now he's basically the substitute coach for whenever Bengi is failing, Tom gets thrown in. This poor Udyr one trick. It's too good. It's too good.
He's able to bear a slap, Monty. That's the thing, isn't it? You know,
nice.
He can take it. He is the whipping boy.
Well done.
So sick, isn't it? That's so sick. Because here's the other thing. Spoiler, watch the Competitive Edge episode that comes out like tomorrow or something. We've already done the bets, don't worry. We're going just against T1 every time they're available. Like, at this point in time, the real question isn't this, Monty. Will they correct course? Right now, my question is, how bad can it get? Can they really lose to everyone in the league? Because if they do, remember what we talked about, like, 2 months ago before MSI, this team had one of the core had one of the best win rates in the history of League of Legends. Massive sample size, and they were like 90% win rate, like you pointed out. That is going to go in the toilet, I'm sorry. Even if they do course correct, because here's the thing, it should still be possible. You do still have some really good players, but it's just that right now, I actually think it's the morale issue that's killing them dead, mate. I just think the rest of the team sort of like, fuck, we're just done. Like, we've lost the leader. Like, it is going bad. And by the way, just like Fnatic, TSM, when it goes bad in these teams, it's going to go really bad because they also know the fan pressure. They know that the trucks are literally on the way. They know that it's going to get really fucking bad for them. Some of them might lose their jobs in their minds. I don't think so, but maybe they think that.
Yeah, look, I think, we'll talk about the morale issue, but you point out the esports bet, so we can talk about that angle right now. Just because some of these odds, we did Competitive Edge, it actually was just released on Esports Bet's channel. If you guys want that content, you can head on over there and check it out. Please subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. Also, FaceCheck is over there if you guys are interested. So basically, what's been going on is that even their upcoming match versus Nongshim at one point had over 3.0 odds. And remember, this is a Nongshim that nearly beat T1 with Faker and Bengi. And now we have these like underdogs. And considering that T1 just got completely slapped by DRX, it wasn't a close series. Sure, they'll have another week to integrate with Poby, but to Thorin's point, that's the issue with having the morale. So T1 odds completely skewed right now. And you guys also should hit up our match of the week, as we do every week here on Last Free Nation. The match of the week is Heretics versus BDS this week. If you place a prediction or a wager on that match, you can get an additional 10% bonus to your winnings, up to $100 USDT. So that means, or its equivalent in other cryptocurrencies. It's only on your first bet, guys, by the way, but it is a good way. I took the slight underdog of BDS because I think that there's a good matchup with Adam into Evie, and I believe in BDS more than I believe in Heretics making a miracle run, especially.
Big, right?
Yeah, it's over 2.0 for BDS, but especially with Zeri and Yuumi cycling out, I think that does limit Heretics' upside on this patch. So I would check that out. You can also get our usual deals of a 50% deposit bonus up to $100. And $100 risk-free, or $100 risk-free first bet. But in order to get the 10% bonus on our match of the week, you have to use our referral code, which is down below. So you can head on over there now and get that done. But to your point about morale, Thorin, I mean, it has to be a morale issue because it's even the individual ability of the players that appears to be decaying, because that doesn't explain why Zeus's, Faker's non-existence in the team doesn't explain why Zeus's individual laning and individual ability seems to have fallen off a cliff. It doesn't explain, it kind of explains Owner's inconsistency, but he was inconsistent this split even before Faker left, and so was Keria. I just wonder how many times they can go to a finals, because think about the legacy. To your point, they went 18-0 last spring. They went 17-1 in this last spring split. How much do they have to win? And yet they still have a negative record in finals. They've lost to Gen.G twice in finals. They won spring finals of last year, but they lost both international finals and they bombed out of MSI. They literally have one major title win to their name, and it was in their honeymoon inaugural split with this roster. And otherwise, it has been a legacy of collapse in the moments that matter.
And that's at the best, like you're saying. So now if you take out the Faker angle, the most experienced player, and here's the thing I'll say as well. I can't even off the top of my head remember any time Faker actually entered a final. He just sort of like didn't play like a star. He just didn't go for it. He sort of like waited for them to give him the trophy or something, didn't he? So here's the problem. I think people went too far the other way. He was never bad. Faker hasn't been bad in this era. It's just that, like, he only showed those brief glimpses in spring of ever being, like, a dominant player again. Aside from that, his whole job in the team was just prop the team up, like, make the rest of the team work, which was brilliant. It actually was working, but when you take that piece away, like you say, he was the spork in the middle of the wheel, and now it's all just falling apart, isn't it?
Yeah, and, if you look at the way that T1 has played over the last year, they have relied a lot of the time on their shot calling. How many times have we seen them go for these 20-minute Barons by playing the map well and be able to sneak it out from underneath their opponent? They're very famous for doing that, playing with Vision in the Fog of War. They were running pick comps for a lot of this year. What do pick comps need? They need aggressive warding and strong vision control so that you can actually eliminate somebody and engage on them before they reach an objective, because you're not necessarily as good as 5v5 team fighting with some of these compositions. Now, that takes a lot of forethought in order to do that, and it takes strong shot calling. How many times have we seen them lay vision traps or do unexpected things on the map or lure people into bad positions? Apparently, that was all or mostly Faker setting up these plans for the team due to his vast experience and game knowledge. And now that they don't have him, We'll never know for sure because the morale issue is also a killer and it's also affecting them. There's clearly multiple things that are going on. But as we look at this, it appears to be very, very good for Faker's legacy. Like the more this team loses, the better Faker is going to look in terms of his career.
Justifiably so. Because that's always the part that you never get, actually, is the problem with league is you can't see what a teammate does for someone and you can't see what a shot caller brings. Like the best examples ever, everyone knows the original one was in the Cloud9 when High stepped out. It was the same thing. High wasn't as good as a mid laner. He had failing health. In came Jensen, a way more skilled player. And even though Jensen was like good, the team just fell apart. Like Meteos didn't work then. Then they had issues with bot lane. Eventually, obviously, High had to come back and play like scoffed jungler. Then you think of other examples in history. It's like, I think Perks leaving G2 is a classic one. Everyone thought, well, Reckless, that's a side grade, isn't it? Like he's as good in ADC, maybe even better. And then the team was about, I wouldn't say they were bad because they were certainly good in the regular split, but they were about half as good in pressure situations. They lost all that genius of stuff they did in the mid game. And that wasn't that it was only Perks, but you could see whatever he did bring, like I thought, like sort of radiated out to the other teammates. It looks like it's a similar scenario in T1.
Yeah, except arguably even worse because it doesn't look like we thought Keria was doing a lot of the shot calling on this team, and his form has also been extremely suspect. So, I mean, Faker's we knew some of Faker's contributions to comms because T1 releases comms, and there have been snippets. Obviously, Faker doing things like split pushing and saying, oh, they're going to come kill me right now. And you guys go do this objective while that happens. And, self-sacrificing or being able to see the game a couple minutes into the future or manipulate the other team to doing what he wants. But it has been even more shocking than I think we expected. And part of that must be, who knows what Bengi's contribution was to your point, Thorin. When Denny left the team after the spring of 2021, that was when they ran their failed 10-man roster. We said at that time, by the way, guys, another time where we were right, Faker is the coach of this team. Now, the reason why I knew that is because I know people who know these teams or who are inside of these teams, by the way. And so when we say things like Faker is the coach now, Faker was the de facto coach now, and he more or less has been this entire time. Sure, bringing in Bengi added some other voices, but if you're T1, this just goes with having a superstar player. If you bring in a superstar player with extensive experience, they are very difficult to coach. Who is qualified to coach Faker? Ooh.
That's why I always said the angle on the LS hire that people don't get is crazy, is apparently Faker signed off on that. He was up for LS being like the strategic coach. That's actually an insane fucking W you can get there. That's why I told you I was so shocked by that whole incident. It's not about whether I thought he should be the coach. Like, the point is, Faker is clearly quite selective with who can coach him, as you're saying, not least because he seems to have, in his latter years, an unusually high level of understanding of the game that isn't just how to play mid lane.
Yeah, and as an example, we've seen the same thing in traditional sports. So Peyton Manning, when he was on the Broncos, had an offensive coordinator named Adam Gase, who had very little success outside of working with Peyton Manning, and got a lot of hype.
Or some after that, right?
He was terrible with the Jets. And so what you see is Peyton Manning was really the one who was the offensive coordinator of the Broncos. He was running that offense. And sometimes you need just kind of a pushover as a coach or a guy who's going to rubber stamp your decisions as a great player. But if we talk about Peyton Manning, who is probably the greatest quarterback in NFL history at making offensive adjustments at the line, who is going to do that better? You can't, it's very hard to find that person. And that person does have to be more or less a crony of the great player. And if Faker is doing the same thing and making these calls and these adjustments in game, it doesn't make sense to have a super authoritative strategic coach. They tried that with Denny. They tried that with the 10-man roster. It exploded. And then 6 months after that exploded, we see this roster that is doing super well. Now, we can't know what caused T1's collapse in many of these big events, because factually, T1 has been the favorite in every single final they've been in outside of summer last year. Anytime they've hit a domestic or an international final, they have been a big favorite, including this spring that they lost. I mean, what's so crazy is that there are people who are rewriting history right now, and this really pisses me off, saying that T1 wasn't great during this spring run.
Yeah.
They are saying, oh yeah, they lost, they bombed out at MSI. The eye test checked out on these guys like a motherfucker halfway through this spring split.
I made this point when we were on one of these shows. Dude, when we were down to the last 4, Dom, the T1 here, had T1 winning MSI. I'm not saying that shit, I'm pointing out. If even he's like, fuck it, I'll hop on. That means that he just sees the trains coming into the station, mate. This is the time to get on.
Like, I don't know what to say. The T1 fans are very annoying. And I know people want to push against their narrative because
split for T1 and Flackhead at the same time and like the bottle and that like the internet, like their joke is everyone would get banned off the internet. Like the toxicity levels would be so high.
I know they're super annoying guys, and I know we all hate them, but it is true that the spring split T1 in the Keria plays Caitlyn and Jhin, support meta.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
They were so fucking good, guys. If you watch some of the plays they were making, if you watch their level of coordination, when you see Owner and Faker doing these mid lane dives with Gragas and Lee Sin, this team was executing beautifully. They were one of the cleanest teams by the eye test that I have seen, and I have seen the entire competitive history of League of Legends, okay? So let's not rewrite the narrative of the past. Now, once the meta shifted and whatever happened within that team that caused them to play so abysmally, especially against Billy at MSI, we will never know. Why did they do things that were clearly against their strengths? Why were they focusing on trying to prop up top lane and ignoring Billy diving them bot when they were the team that dove people bot for the entire split? We will never know why these things occurred. I would love to have been a part of those conversations or be able to listen in into why the decisions they made. That it was self-sabotaging, I feel, in many ways, or perhaps overconfident. But this team was incredibly good. And especially as JDG was just kicking off and JDG was looking a bit shakier as they kind of put the pieces together. Now, that's entirely different now. JDG looks fucking amazing. And they look fucking amazing at MSI. And it's hard to imagine them losing the title when it comes to LPL. It's hard to imagine them not being the favorite going into the World Championship. But I do think it's good to recognize when T1 was super strong. And that's really the tragedy of this roster, is that we never got to really see them complete their runs. They had extremely high highs, but when it mattered, they would flame out. And that sucks. Because I would love to see Faker win another international title before he retires.
That's why, if people don't remember, like if T1 was never good, then why did people call Keria the best player in the world? By the way, if you're support, your team has to be cracked for you to be the best player as support. Like, it is not a position that can, by definition, carry the game. And in fact, I even thought, quite frankly, Monty, a lot of Western fucking players pushed the boat out trying to copy Keria, and they couldn't. They didn't have when they played the Ashe support, the fucking Kai'Sa support, it didn't look the same, mate. I even thought the analogy for you, it's just for you, no one else knows Overwatch. It's like that thing when JJoNak was the best player in season 1 of Overwatch, and all the other supports were like, I want to be pocketed, and then the coaches had to tell them, like, you ain't JJoNak, bro. You know what I mean? So it's like, eventually it was a waste of time. If you don't know, he was like the MVP as a support player. It was the same shit. So that's why that team it was amazing. Like, they actually did look like if they won, it'd be historic. So yeah, I agree. I always hate whenever there's a shot for history and like the streak ends at 14 and the record is 15, or like you say, I hate how many times someone's been going for a grand slam and they fuck it up last minute. And like even G2, they fucked it up in the last match. They win one more BO5 at West. I think people still haven't understood, Monty. One day separated a Western team being the only team ever to do the Grand Slam. Now, obviously, the domestic ones would be easier, but to win MSI and Worlds over fucking Koreans and LPL would have been like, that would have been like something for the ages in esports. So I always think it sucks when history like just gets the swerve at the last second. You don't quite get it. You'll get blue balls on it.
I mean, at least G2 did win an international event, unlike this iteration of T1. It is really hard. It is really hard to watch. And this is just the bias. You also have to consider that the bias of the format of League of Legends plays into this, because we only get 2 patches that we play international tournaments on. Had we had a normal, and by normal, I mean normal in the history of all esports, tournament cycle, like we've had in many, many other games in the past over the 25 years of esports history that we have, we would have seen an international tournament on the patch where T1 was super good, and they would have won that tournament, guys. I hate to say, they would have fucking smacked people at that tournament. But unfortunately, the peak of their form came in the middle of a regular season.
Yeah, if this was the CSGO circuit, they'd probably win like 2 titles then, and then maybe they failed a major in that analogy, By the way, I'll give you a quick example where I do that Thorin thing, where I'm right and I'm historically correct. It just really irritates you that I am right and I'm the one saying it. So get basically the whole episode. But watch this. Hey guys, remember when Froggen, the Western Faker, was playing on Golden Guardians? It was in season 9, and he was really fucking good. He was winning on like Vel'Koz. He was playing the Karthus when Karthus was a jungler. He was like matching up into people, even though he had like contracts as his dodgy ass jungler. And then obviously like Hort was. You're probably thinking, shut the fuck up talking about season 9. That was 4 years ago, Thorin. Oh, really? Because last time Faker won an international tournament was season 6. How many years ago was that, dickhead? Exactly. So if you want me to shut the fuck up about Froggen, don't ever tell me that Faker is the player he was all that time. The first half of his career, he was mega. The second half of his career is this captain role. It's a totally different style. He hasn't been the best for a long, long time now. So all I'm doing is just putting it into, let's just get in the fucking contrast here. Let's see what actually is going on. Because all you need to know is this. The joke is, I'm going to be relative here, obviously. Froggen was better more recently than Faker was. There you go. Just drop that one.
Whoa.
There's the bath bomb for you, fizzing up.
I don't know. Faker was pretty good this spring, but whatever.
No, relative. We're talking relative.
Oh, relative. All right.
Yeah, relative to the region, obviously. Not like season 2 when Faker was just some noob playing normals and Froggen was better than him. Alston stole that in as well. Another thing that's true. That is true. Go look it up.
Objectively true. Faker didn't debut until spring of 2013.
Dude, Froggen made an OGN final before Faker. It's fucking slacker. What are you talking about? This guy needs to step his game up. I'm going to go all day.
Also, here we go. Froggen also made an OGN final in his first season in OGN. Faker didn't do that.
Exactly. There you go. So all I'm saying is, which F is the better one, Froggen or Faker? Will we ever know? Sadly, they didn't play each other, except that 1v1 All-Stars. Froggen won on Anivia.
Why do you remember these things?
I remember everything, motherfuckers. Don't worry about that. Don't you worry about that. I remember it all.
Why?
The joke is, here's the trivia. Because Faker agreed to play the Anivia as a 1v1 matchup, because Froggen's Froggen, he didn't even try to kill him, he just farmed him one by got in the 100 CS, which is also the most genius way to win the 1v1. Because Faker was obviously thinking, like, we're going to get like some part. And he's like, no, it's like, I'm Froggen, homie. Do you don't know what I do? Barishnikov danced, Pavarotti song. This is why I farm minions on Anivia. Watch me farm.
Froggen PvE to the win.
Exactly.
Fabulous. Yeah. So I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation because the legacy of Faker continues to grow. And what I love about this, I mean, obviously I don't love Faker being in physical pain.
The obvious angle that will really make it the perfect movie is if he somehow comes back fucking like, oh my God, it's Willis Reed. He's here for the finals. If he rocks up for playoffs, plays, and he's decent, mate. They can never talk any shot Faker ever again. Then it'll be godlike, won't it?
What happens if the entire team starts playing better? Because that's the thing, is that it's not just him gone. His teammates are playing badly, probably because they're demotivated, which I don't even blame them. Like, the expectations on this team from the fan base, from absolutely everybody, not even their anti-fans, there's huge expectations around these teams. Like, the haters have expectations. And it is very difficult when you've fallen short so many times. So if you see the renaissance of T1 when Faker returns and they look like they can snap back into form immediately, and it looks like, to at least a certain degree, part of that is his shot calling and his presence within the games. I mean, the mystique around Faker grows substantially. It's going to be glorious. I mean, I hope it happens because, frankly, like, the rest of the LCK looks kind of shit. So...
And also, all I'm going to say is this. Obviously, Faker is the muse. That's why when I say this name, you're all going to think, yeah, where has he been? Where's Fionn been at for the last, 2 years? I tell you what, Faker comes back and they make the finals. Probably do a fucking article again. Like, the old Fionn might come back. Fionn might be on fire again. Never know.
Well, he's in Valorant now. We lost him. We lost him to Valorant.
That's gross. Mate, you used to watch StarCraft. And now you're already at the league. Now you're in Valorant, like children's CSGO. Not even once, mate. Come on, have some self-respect. Then again, in some ways, I'm CSGO and you're Valorant. So, just saying, ratio.
I don't know if you saw this, Thorin. There's been a funny tweet from some random like Australian caster that's been making the rounds on Twitter.
What's this?
Oh, hold on. Let me find it for you because it's actually an interesting take about the role of casters.
What you mean? It was the one that was about like CS:GO versus Valorant and how like in was that is that the one you're talking about?
No. Here, let me link it for you. It's hold up. It is okay. Here we go. Maybe we can bring up a screenshot of it as well. So it's from this random guy.
I've never heard of this person before. Okay.
We've never heard of this person. He's an Apex caster. I'm Brad. He's Australian. And he says, esports hot take. Casters are the least important part of a broadcast and should be paid like it. He is, by the way, a caster himself. Admins, observers, and production are more essential to a broadcast.
Weird question for you, Monty. Then logically, in a market, why aren't they paid more? What he's doing there is what they used to do to me. And are you ready? I don't care about being the villain. I'll show you that I am. In some ways, I was a diva once upon a time. When I used to work for like A-League, massive events, when basically I got hired and offered every event in CSGO, Monty. I used to turn them down because I didn't want to bloody fly long haul from Korea back to Europe and then here all the time, every fucking 2 weeks. So when I was at like full diva status, because at the time you used to get any breaks as an analyst, Monty. You used to actually just work 14-hour days and you didn't even get travel days. You just arrived the day before, then just began work at 8 a.m. the next day. So at the time, you had to be on your game. You had to be at the top of your level all times with no breaks. Even when you got back home, you'd have like 2 hours to wind down. Then you had like 4 hours to sleep. Then you have to get up and go to the thing again. When we were all stressed like that, I used to even say, look, I'm going to be a diva to Richard because here's the thing. I have to get the food at the time they say it's going to be here before the match. I have to have the drink I want to drink in order to be at my peak level because in this scenario, if they don't do their job properly, no one sees that, but my job looks shitter. I look like I'm failing. And so there used to be people, I know Scoots was in this camp, where they had the same bullshit commie argument of like, hey man, you know, the cameraman and the fucking guy bringing us the food is just as important. It's like, no, Scoots, he is important relative to the fact that we care about him and he has a value to the role, but he by definition can't be as important because it's a finite level of importance to go around. And if he doesn't even turn up, I still have to do my job, and at the end no one would fully know. Meanwhile, if I don't turn up, he can't just go out with the balls of water and start going, I don't know about cobblestone, Richard. Like, so by definition, he isn't as important. And not anyone, but a lot of people can do that job. I mean, I'm just going to say this right now. I've literally known people who were just girlfriends of pros who've done that job immediately in an event. Now, would you see someone replace me, just some girlfriend, go on ESL Cologne, like, well, Alex, I think on the second map, they're going to... No. So my problem with this is this. This guy is one of those fucking young people who doesn't even understand economics. He actually thinks that they are fucking paid. Like, he goes there, they should be paid like it. They are paid based on the market of the price set by the top people. If there is no interest, by the way, you could be the best caster in the world. This happened to Frostgorin. No gigs. Doesn't matter. No one will pay you 1 cent to cast LPL or LEC at the time. But when you're really, really good, even someone I don't like I'll use Gabby Durden, right? I don't like her. She keeps getting hired. I'm sure she gets paid a nice day rate. Doesn't matter that I don't think she's that good. She gets paid whatever she agreed with Riot. And it's not like the USSR. There is not a commissar of casting who's like, give Gabby Durden 10 credits. Monte Cristo 1 only, and off to the Gulag for Samastad. Like, there's not like that. No one is deciding, or like, there's no like, you're not worth that. You are worth whatever negotiating power you have and whatever price you settle on. So all he's done there, like an idiot, is be like, I think the rest of them are all more essential. Well, then why aren't they able to use that leverage? Why is an admin not paid as much as Monte Cristo, Frostgorin, Gabby? Why are they not paid as much? Because by definition, they're not. Like, what you mean there is, in my Narnia fantasy world, they should be paid more. That's an okay statement. It's just shit. It doesn't mean anything.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Thorin. I actually think that people in production are getting paid more than casters these days, based on what I know. Well, not the refs. Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about the market. So, like, this guy is kind of right, but he's not right because he knows things. He's kind of accidentally right in this case.
Outdoor, because you know the thing about Dor is he'll never actually just be like, shut it, you cunt. He's obviously not me. So he did it in the most Dor way ever, but it's a pure slam. He just goes, I think this might be the most ignorant thing I've read about not just esports, but broadcasting in general. Look, wait, in his way, that's like, oh, fucking savage just dropped the bird on this motherfucker. I love it. I'm going to retweet
that. So when we talk about esports, and your point about the market, Thorin, if you are a producer and you live in Los Angeles, you have a lot of different things that you could go do because there's tons of production going on in the city. So in terms of the market, they actually do kind of. Now, it's still, a dream gig for some people, probably the lower level producers, but the experienced producers are paid extremely well to be on LCS. Now, the problem is there isn't a market for the other casters because Riot has a total global monopoly on League of Legends. There isn't a way for Kobe to go do analysis in another game without learning another game, which is what I had to do to escape the Riot fucking caster gulags, guys, because I more than doubled my pay by leaving League of Legends. So, there wasn't really a good reason to stick around. Now, it required me to learn Overwatch and to develop other skills, but that has served me very well over time. And I certainly have made more money than I would have if I stayed with League of Legends, especially now because they've completely capped the caster rates. So when we talk about whether casters are important to broadcasts, also think about the latest big esports game, Valorant. Where do people watch Valorant? It's not on the mainstream, guys. As a caster, you are at best a background voice in Tarek's stream. Tarek's stream, the co-streamers get literally 75% to 80% of the viewership within Valorant. It is absurd. And if you think those casters are going to continue to get paid well in Valorant when they are completely disposable because they're not even really being listened to on those main broadcasts, you got another thing coming. In this case, weirdly, here's the thing about the market. The market for observers in Valorant is a lot of people who used to be observers for Counter-Strike. So they actually do have a market where they could go to Counter-Strike, work in Counter-Strike events, or work in Valorant events. And so I imagine they are getting paid quite well. As far as I know,
the people who are the biggest in Valorant at the moment are two of the casters who were the main observers, who were the main two in CSGO and Prius. And that's, I think, why they choose Valorant now, is I actually think that Riot pays them more because of that exact reason, and probably to get the name value and get someone who knows what they're doing and all that shit.
Yeah. So I mean, the weird thing is that this tweet isn't necessarily wrong about the future of the industry as the co-streamers continue to gain traction. And in some games, they are the vast and overwhelming majority of the viewership. Do I think that's going to happen in CSGO? Well, it has happened in non-English versions of CSGO, obviously with Gallus. Do I think that's going to happen in League of Legends or CSGO in English? Probably not. But the problem here is that we will never know, because Riot is basically, what they're going to do is they're going to hold people hostage on their streams. By what I mean about this is that you'll notice that the vast majority of casters outside of Cadril do not have any co-streaming. And Cadril doesn't have co-streaming rights to LCS as far as I'm aware. And so LCS isn't going to give Captain Flowers co-streaming privileges for the matches that he's not casting, because they want to continue to hold all of the LCS casters basically prisoner on the broadcast for whatever rate they say, and fuck you, because we're not going to give you co-streaming rights if you leave. I mean, it's a pretty grim situation for casters overall. And to his point, most of these esports companies do think that casters are the least important part of the broadcast, and they are getting paid like it.
The problem is when he says admin, that is so pushing the boat out. It is mental. That is like, for real, some like fake ass pop star. Imagine, I mean, like, I'll have to pick someone who's alive still. So maybe I'll say like Bruno Mars. That's how old my references are. That's like 10 years old, but whatever. To me, all the kids are into Bruno Mars, right? So imagine Bruno Mars at the Giant Concert Monty. He's just on the concert. He's going to go home with 4 different women and be paid $7 million for this tour. And he goes, hey girls, because I assume he talks like fucking Michael Jackson. He looks like him. She goes, hey girls, the thing is, like, I don't like being all the center of attention. But then again, See you later, though. But the thing is, I always thought like the security guys and the people who bring me my water, they're the real heroes of the show. I wish they were paid 7 million. Anyway, oh sorry, is that my stretch limo? Gotta go, guys. See, it's been real. Like fucking, it's such a ridiculous take. And also the obvious joke, like Monty said's right there. Look, come on, mate. I know a thief thinks everyone steals, but just because you're not worth being paid a lot of money doesn't mean we're really good at what we do. Your most famous moment ever was getting dunked on by Dora in his fucking tweet. And that's Dora, for fuck's sake. One of the sweetest men to ever. He's even just had a child. He's like, good night. Let me just politely dunk my nuts on this guy's face, and good luck with your career, though. Yes, like, I love it. I just love it. I love because it's like he just did the most like fucking tepid, but at the same time savage burn. If you know who he is, it's perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
But anyway, he is correct because the market isn't there. There is no market. It is a monopoly that exists. So casters are de facto the least important part. Now, if there was a free market, then we could see how this existed. And in a way, you know, a lot of us, myself included, watched tons of StarCraft 2 because of Tasteless and Artosis. The casters were the most popular people in the early days of esports, or in the mid days of esports. It's only recently that they've been eclipsed by streamers. But the rights to the broadcast that would be popular, we know this because of Cadrill's stream. The rights to the broadcast would be popular with them if they were allowed to co-stream, but they just aren't. You know, they just aren't. If you're a caster, you're just not allowed to co-stream.
There's also the angle from Valorant, where again, no one can ever speak about this, but I can, so I'll say it. We obviously did a 4 Horsemen episode on it. There's also the thing where Riot and ESL before them are fully aware that Tasteless and Artosis ran the whole industry and had insane leverage. So they don't ever want that again. They don't want it like Day 9, where Day 9 did an IEM and they had to pay him loads of money and he got the VODs for his YouTube channel. That's like, what? Like, what do we even do the tournament for them? We don't even keep our own broadcast rights. So basically, because they don't want that, the best example ever is you could have had one of the all-time great casting or analysis pairs ever in esports in Sean Gares and DDK. They, from day one of the beta, wanted to be those people. But because Riot continually broke them up, swapped their roles, didn't hire one to play mind games, hired the other one, but then didn't pay them as much, because of all that shit, they literally retired from broadcast, guys, and went and did jobs. Like Sean Gares, I think now works as a content creator for Shopify Rebellion and was working previously with 100 Thieves. DDK is like the GM of 100 Thieves or whatever.
He's a desk guy in VCT as well, so he's still working with Riot.
Yeah, but for like a whole year or two or something, he wasn't doing anything. Like, these were the best guys. Like, you've took the best people out of your ecosystem by what a dickhead you are. So the joke actually is the other way around. The actual absolute best talent, like Monty says, don't actually make their value. The TOs do everything they can to fuck with them and make sure they keep them down and keep that rate suppressed, because they also know, in the rare bad examples, how crazy someone else could be if they held the fucking kibosh and could bring it down on Riot at any moment.
Yeah, I mean, the whole ecosystem is just wild right now for casters. Like, it's okay in CSGO because at least there are still competitive tournament operators. But even then, you know, the fuckery around exclusivity. And the fuckery around hiring for the Blast Major was, you know, not great, because the companies are now taking it to the degree where when they have a major, they won't hire the best talent in the world because they don't work for their company, which is a really shitty way to celebrate the pinnacle of CSGO. So it is, it's actually grim out there. And this is why people ask me, oh yeah, Monty, I want to become a caster. My answer is why? Why would you want to do that right now? It is fucking terrible. And
back in the day, if someone ever came up to Richard at an event and was like, I want to get into esports, he'd just be like, don't bother. I knew exactly what he meant.
I think you can get involved in esports, but being involved as being a caster right now is just so garbage, because there's just such a hard cap on the amount of money you can make and the where you could go with your career, that it's just simply not worth it. It is simply not worth it. You should be doing literally anything else with your time, including other things in esports. It's not necessarily an esports problem. I don't agree with Richard's kind of grim take, but that's just who he is. He's a very dramatic person.
Well, here's the thing, Monty. We got up to a high there. We're obviously feeling a bit irritated. It was getting a bit heated, wasn't
Here
it?
it goes.
Much like when you enjoy cannabis products, except the difference is you want to ride out the high then, don't you? So here's the thing. You can actually get to the high without the irritating part. Imagine if I could just deliver all my jokes and straight fire points without that sort of fucked up self-aggrandizing thing where I credit myself and call out all my haters and mention how no one can do what I do, pat myself on the back 50 times, and then I'm my own hype man, basically. That's my problem. That's another thing I had from back in the day. So what I would obviously do if I wanted to do that with cannabis products is I would get a freeze pipe from thefreezepipe.com. And even though I am Thorin, I already have a freeze pipe. In fact, I even have the twin turbo one. They sent me that one. Shout out for that. I obviously, if I was going to buy one, would do it through Last Free Nation, because if I wasn't me, I'm absolutely arrogant enough to believe I would support me in a different life if I was sort of a clone or an alternate reality. In fact, if I could go back in a time machine to a different timeline, I'd just support myself. I'd subscribe to my own Patreon. I'd give myself Twitch Prime. I'd use all the codes. I'd watch Competitive Edge. I'd thumbs up, like, subscribe to all the YouTube channels, including Elephant Culture channel. I'd even watch that fucking nerd culture thing that I don't watch because I hate Star Trek and think only Star Trek Next Generation was good. But anyway, if I was to do all that stuff,
how dare
obviously,
you?
when I smoke cannabis products, I wouldn't just go straight in, fools rush in, remember? I would wait. I'd take my freeze pipe using the code LFN, 10% off at thefreezepipe.com. I would take the food safe glycerin chamber. I especially like my chambers to be food safe, because the thing is, the chamber in Valorant wasn't food safe. It wasn't even something you could eat. It was a virtual character, an agent. Is it called agents in that game? I think it is.
Yes.
Agent inside that. Whereas in real life, it's an agent for getting you cooler smoke and a nicer smoking experience, because you put it into the freezer for only 1 hour. Only 1 hour. That's less than the time I had to wait yesterday for the LPL to go to that last series to do Best Damn League Show with Dom, which is on this channel right now. We talk about Reckless, Carlos, T1. Yeah, there we go. We've got all the fans, got all the engagement. That's good. Now, what I would do then is I'd take out the freeze pipe food safe glycerin chamber and I'd go, love the fact it's food safe. Ooh, bit cold, but okay. I'd put it into my bong, the freeze pipe. I would then smoke cannabis products. THC and other cannabinoids would also enter my system. And I would just really enjoy it. Wouldn't I have a great time? Wouldn't have any of that annoying shit where you thought, next day, like, oh, I can't talk. No, it'd be great. I'd just be speaking like this still, like a guy who sounds like he's 25, but he's actually 40, pushing a little bit more than that. But you don't need to know that. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that. E40. I'm also a great rapper from the old school. There's a reference from the real old school for you. Now, obviously, if you want to enjoy this kind of scenario, you can go to thefreezepipe.com, use the code LFN for 10% off. That's it. That's the end of the segment. Now we're back into talking about League of Legends.
How dare you say that TNG is the only good Star Trek? Look, there are two good Star Treks, and the best one is Deep Space Nine. The second best one is TNG, and then all of the rest of them suck. Okay.
By the way, the original doesn't hold up at all. Do not go back and watch that. Like, I've even always told people, dude, the thing that holds up the worst about that is that Kirk just goes to planets where they're not even fully like human, Monty. They're like they look, they're like, they have 2 legs and arms. He just fucks anything that moves. It's mental. Like, dude, have you not even thought to yourself, like, if no species of yours has ever had sex with theirs, what if when you put the dick in, like, it just, their whole shit's like, it just chops it off or something? What are you talking about? What, you're just taking chances. He's like the first guy ever to see a fucking one of those Hoover attachments and go, wait a minute, no one's coming back till 3. This guy was fucking, he was up. That character is like, it's, when you remember the best ones, like the movies, he was good. That show was mad overrated, mate. It was mad sketchy.
I mean, Kirk boldly goes. What can you say? He's an explorer. He's an explorer. He's perfectly equipped to that role. But yes, I think the original series is insanely overrated. Good for its time, didn't age well, but DS9 aged really well. It is a great show. But that, for me, the watching of Star Trek is mostly just a vain hope that it will eventually return to being good. But that hope is dwindling because they keep making Star Trek shows and they keep not being very good. I will say Strange New Worlds is okay at times, but a lot of the reason why I'm doing this is just to keep up with this stuff with Doa, and it's actually funny to make fun of it. So there you go. But yes,
I actually do have a whole mad thing. I'll probably do it as a video on my own though. I've got a whole thing I could do about Star Trek and how it's not actually badly written. It's literally part of the culture war. And they essentially intentionally, it's like Star Wars. They subvert expectations and ruin all the storylines and make the characters. Like, I'll give you a little freebie. They always do put a Kirk-esque character in these shows now, but his job is to be lectured by all the female characters, like that Indiana Jones thing. Where your job is just to be there, like, listen, Dad, and I'm sick of your heteronormative. It's all that shit. it. Like, so as a result, like, I think they've actually intentionally ruined these shows, mate. It's essentially a humiliation ritual. It's like, your punishment must be more severe, not until you have seen the last Star Trek. Then you may die. Like,
the shame done.
there you go. Always. Because when you just saw that trailer where it's like, yeah, and you killed a lot of indigenous people. What are you talking about? It's Indiana. Bro, it's Indiana. He stopped the Nazis. What are you talking about? They were going to get the fucking Holy Grail and live forever. I think he's done a pretty good job. I'm just going to say that. I think he was pretty good, Indiana Jones.
All right. To be fair to the latest Indiana Jones movie, he is actually portrayed as the virtuous one in that because
fair play.
She wants to steal all the artifacts and sell them, and he's like, no, that's not ethical.
Oh, fuck. What, she on some like no ethical consumerism under capitalism? I'm just going to sell off all this shit on eBay.
She literally tries to sell everything, and he's like, no, stop doing that. So he actually redeems her in many ways.
Fair play.
Just putting that out there. It was better than you think it would be. Is it good? It's okay.
I'll still never watch it, so it's all good. I believe you. I'm never going to watch it. Don't worry. But here's the thing. I used to save movies like that, Monty. I know we don't travel anymore, but this is back in the day. I always used to tell people, I noticed a lot of casters did this. We always saved the not very good superhero movies for when you're on the plane and it's like, you want to sleep, but you can't. And it's like, I've got to just do something for 2 hours. That's when it's like, right, time to watch Green Lantern.
Exactly.
Who gives a shit? Another whiskey, please. You know what I mean? Like, this is garbage. And it doesn't matter because all you need literally is just things to flash in front of your eyes. Like I've told people the story before. I've even out the side of my eye watched Frozen when that little kid in that story just watched it like 7 times. Obviously, you can't not see in your peripheral. I'm just seeing the whole story. Like, holy shit. Anyway, back to League of Legends.
Interesting.
One piece of detail. Here's how you know T1's actually fucked. You might not have seen this because you might not have been on Reddit. Apparently, the other day, LS and friends beat T1 Academy with fiddlesticks. Bro. And the skill vampires got into T1 Academy, the place that produced like fucking Scout. All these players in T1 now, like these great players. Somehow now LS is just banging them. LS is masters in Korea. I'm like,
all right, a few things. I think LS actually had some like pro players or former pro players with him on that one. Secondly, the Academy is the one below Challengers.
Oh, thirdly, right. I'm confused, right? Fair play.
Yeah. Thirdly, if these players are not good enough, I don't know anything about these players, but if these players are not good enough to be on T1's Challenger team, which is one of the worst Challenger teams, and I think in the Academy they've won like 1 game out of 28 so far. They are a miserably bad team, like 3rd-tier team. That said, Korea's talent pool is still deep, and I'm sure they're still very good players. So it's not unimpressive, but yeah, there you go. So another LCK development that happened very recently in the last couple of days is that Bible is now in at D+ Kia, which is a super
I always thought, by the way, because that player obviously played a while back, if everyone remembers. I always thought that was a true travesty that player didn't play in LCK when Doa used to cast. Because if you know how deep Doa's bag would have been on Bible, it would have actually been amazing. I'm telling you right now, that's one of those ones where it's almost like an alley-oop. It's like, just go
so
get
good.
it, mate. You did a 360 slam on this motherfucker. I know it.
He is the way to the truth for D+. But for those of you guys who don't know Bible, who maybe weren't watching last year, he did sub in for a few games on D+ Kia. This is back when they still had Dokdam and Nuguri. He had 1 game that he won and looked really impressive on a Mumu versus Gen G. And remember, this is when Gen G was super good, like the favorites in the league last summer. And also some context that I discussed with Wolf is that D+'s Challenger team, so their tier 2 team, went the entire first round robin 9-0 in best of 3s, but they also went 18-0 in games, and they only lost their first game. They're still 11-0 in best of 3s, but they only lost their first game against Brion's Challenger team this last week. So they have been an absolute tear. There's been tons of hype for Lucid, the jungler, and Thanatos, the top laner, about maybe being like the next, big rookies within the LCK environment. And the reason why they have allegedly made this switch with putting Bible in the main roster is that he is better at engage supports. Now, we've seen this in games that he's already played within the LCK. And he also is a shot caller. And that's why we thought, actually, last year when D+ was, or Dom1 at the time, was having all these issues with their shot calling in game, that Bible would be a permanent change. But he came in really fast. I think Kellen had COVID at the time. Then he came out, and that was it. and that was the end of it. And he went back down and has now been leading this challenger squad to this amazing run. But it does seem like this might be a more permanent change this time. And I haven't been able to watch the games yet, guys, because this is being recorded at 8 a.m. my time, and those games happened in the middle of the night when they played Live Sandbox. But D+ did 2-0 Live Sandbox last night, and we did see Bible on some engaged support. So I'll comment more about his particular gameplay once I watch those matches, probably on the Monty and Wolf show this coming week. But this seems like a good change because the shot calling issue was never really sorted out for D+, especially in some of their late game scenarios. And the other problem has been that when Canyon has been able to play carry junglers, D+ has done very well this split. When he has been on Sejuani duty or engage duty, he's looked kind of shit a lot of the time. When he's on Maokai, for example. So if they can kind of shift the engage burden to Kana and to Bible and open up Canyon to do these wacky flexes that he's known to do, I think this could be potentially a very successful change as they get settled into it. I'm excited. I wish they would have done this sooner, frankly.
Sure.
So yeah, it's interesting. That's the latest on the LCK news outside of KT continuing to absolutely roll people.
Luckily, because KT is way better. Gen G KT is the final will still be a banger. That'll still be a great series. And it's interesting to see he'll win. Like, there's so many good storylines come out of it.
Yeah, and at the very least, guys, I do appreciate that roster changes are being made, both kind of non-voluntarily in Hanwha's case and voluntarily in D+'s case, because the thing about Korean teams has been they have been famously reluctant to make roster moves halfway through the season. And it's surprising that they're making them halfway through the summer season, which is even closer to the playoffs, to Worlds qualification and Worlds itself. But you know what? Like, given the state of the league and the state of D+ and Hanwha, I think they need to make changes if they're going to be competitive internationally, because obviously Hanwha had a lot of issues with Clid, both inside and outside of the game. Grizzlies looked halfway decent. Hanwha plays KT tomorrow, so that'll be some very interesting data that we'll have. And then from D+'s side, you know, they had some really clear flaws that I think would not have held up very well at the international level. If they can get their shot calling together, maybe they can be a good team.
Keyword is maybe, but
maybe.
Thing is,
they have been really inconsistent.
Part of me, anytime someone was a really good player in the past, I always do pull for him to come back. Like, I always want Clint to actually have some fucking pop-off game again and show that he was a good player, you know. I hate it when they just become a meme at the end and everyone will just think they were shit. Like, the worst example in LCS ever is Zion Spartan / Darshan. Because he was in the academy for years. He wasn't that good even there. Everyone thinks he's a meme. Like, this guy was a fucking monster in Season 4 and Season 5. He was like one of the ODNA players that could split push. Like, I hate it when people's whole legacy just gets tossed away because the nephews didn't see him play, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he was very, very good at one point in time and was one of the dominant top players, at least had his own specific style, and he created win conditions for the teams that he played for. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely true. Speaking of other roster moves to untried players, Team Liquid switching over to APA in the mid lane. Bit of a surprise there, but Harry's performance has been extremely underwhelming since he started, and I think, you know, Team Liquid trying to bank on mid lane and AD carry. We talked about this when they created this roster. Mid lane and AD carry, the carry roles, both being rookies with some super veteran players, may not be the best move for Liquid, right?
So the APA move, you mean?
Yeah.
We talk a bit about this on Competitive Edge, by the way, but basically my take goes like this. Obviously, he does look like a better player. I mean, I always thought Harry was just the most fucking fraudulent player. No, he plays mid lane as well, guys. Like, this is how I know TL. They used to be one of the best dogs at getting good talent. They had the choice to just retain Jensen. How's that age? He's had one championship since then, you dickheads. Even on bad Dignitas, he was good, right? You could have kept Jensen. Instead, you swapped to Bjergsen at exactly the wrong moment. And then after that, you go to Harry. And so obviously the whole thing you were resting it on was this stupid theme of like, it's an all-Korean team, but like, don't look at the flags. They can speak Korean. And it's like, that was going to be your superpower. That was going to make Pyosik like a godlike MVP or whatever. Like, it never worked. It never happened. And the joke is now they're right to just break that up and just bring in a good player. Forget the Korean shit. Let's Let's just bring in a good player and try and get a few games. And obviously they're hoping, the dream is, it's not going to happen, is that this is going to be like the Emenez effect when he came in after Diplex and suddenly he was tearing it up and people weren't prepared for him. Like, he had the pop-offs early.
I think it's interesting, though, with APA, because what I like about this guy is he just has balls. You know, he's going in, he's all inning, he's listening to his comms, and we've seen him kind of make very aggressive plays on unorthodox champions like Ziggs and commit to plays that are being made by Pyosik. So already the synergy looks a lot better. I'd rather have a player like APA who is at least there to, you know, try and believe in himself to make the play, rather than Harry, who never really developed a style or apparent synergy with the rest of the roster. There wasn't a lot of personality within his play, and it didn't look like he was willing to go in or commit 100% in the way that APA has so far. So,
like, look, it's one thing to like put the plaster on, kiss the boo-boo. It's all right, it'll be better, honey. It's not like Team Liquid's going to win LCS, though. Like,
no,
I think this has been a mismanaged squad. It just doesn't look that good.
It's also that this guy was subbed in midweek and he has a very different champion pool. So it was going to be harder to prepare for him, whereas it's going to be much easier for teams to prepare for him in the coming week. Also, speaking of swap outs, there was news last night that Spirax, I'm not sure how to say his name, the mid laner from FlyQuest Academy, is going to be coming into the main roster for Vikla, which is not a surprise given that Vikla's performance has been so incredibly poor. I guess they don't want to sub out Spica as well, because those two have been the primary, I would say, points of failure so far on FlyQuest. And maybe it'll rejuvenate the team, at least in terms of their morale. But I think this was a necessary shift for FlyQuest. I'm just shocked that Vikla could go from nearly making Worlds, nearly knocking out DRX, who eventually won Worlds during the qualification, winning LCK Rookie of the Year, and now be this terrible in North America while still playing the game a lot and maintaining his number one position in the challenger queue. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this.
The main thing is, I have an angle on this because I did a TikTok on this topic the other day because I think it's always a mad underrated aspect. There's another reason, in my opinion, why if you bring Koreans, you do bring two. And obviously they did in this case, but I think it sometimes doesn't help as well, right? Another thing about when you bring Koreans to the West is, another reason they degrade isn't just solo queues worse. It's that when they see they have teammates that like just don't play the game, like you're sitting there grinding after your scrim blocks, and then you look over and he's watching his new anime, he's talking to his girlfriend on Discord, he's playing some like fucking PvE game. Eventually you're going to get dispirited. Eventually you're going to go, why am I putting in mad hours when they're just practicing like whatever? So I have to say, this is a common trend. Like, sadly, a lot of Koreans either don't even arrive as good or they just degrade over time. They just go off like fucking milk left out in the sun. It's ridiculous. And this guy, it's really sad in this case because if they're doing well in scrims, there's no way he was playing like this. There's just no way. He's just inexplicably bad in LCS, and he is bad. Like, he just can never... He never,
very bad.
After, like, whenever he went off in, like, the middle of spring, he never turned up again, mate. The nosedive just continued.
It's just very weird because it's not like this guy hasn't had stage games. He's had high-pressure matches in Korea in which he performed. It is completely baffling why he would regress to this form when we 100% know that he's grinding it out in solo queue right now. And as you say, Thorin, we know that the scrim results are very good. It is definitely one of the weirdest phenomenons I've ever seen, and there must be a huge mental angle to this because that's the only thing that actually makes sense. There's no reason for him to be performing this badly, given the history of what's happened.
And by the way, this is where fans are the shittest people in the whole ecosystem, because the way they treat people the second that you're down, right? So even though Papa Smithy has never been anything but cool to fans, shows, like keeping them involved in like what's going on, giving his reasoning when other orgs don't, by the way, as to why he does stuff, right? So when he built 100 Thieves from a meme into a team that actually was going to Worlds and was winning championships and was in 3 you'd think, right, we can't talk shit on Papa Smithy. Oh no, now they've retconned it, Monty. I saw loads of this in Reddit threads. The retcon is cause FlyQuest failed, he never actually did anything. His version of 100 Thieves is Rioma and those players like that. that. And then all he did was see that Golden Guardians had those 3 players, and all he did was just sign them and put them in his team, and then they just had the success. So basically, I noticed they forget to mention Abidag there, but apparently he's just a total fraud. He's now been exposed. As usual, everyone who ever loses was always a fraud. By the way, the best example ever is Perks. I'm not joking. They don't say now he's bad, Monty, and he isn't even bad now. He's just below par. They say he was always a fraud, and this just exposed him. It's like, bro, you got to listen. When you reach your 15th birthday and they drop, you talk a bit deeper. You'll start to realize some things about life, because it can't work that way, you cretin. Like, what happens is you have a long career, and over time you have ups and downs, and later in your career you're not as good as earlier. Like, Papa Smithy did an amazing job. I mean, why do you think he got the FlyQuest gig? How do you think he got convinced them to sign these big name Koreans and put in this team and get Impact and put it all together? And Speaker, like, listen, just because it didn't work, this in the offseason looked like fabulous roster construction.
Also, Papa Smithy has been very public about saying in success, so he's not blaming anybody now, but in the original success at the start of the split, he said that Nick Fan, who is the GM of FlyQuest, was the one who put this roster together, not him, and that the talks about the roster were already ongoing by the time he was hired. Okay? So he was trying to give the GM the credit for creating this roster in the first place. Now, maybe that hasn't aged the best at the current time, but also, who could have known that this roster that started so well, the skill vampires were going to double down on this entire roster? And he made a good move. Everybody saw that Ayla and Winsome were doing terribly within this team, and he went and got the premier North American support, which is Vulcan. Because he can't have more imports into his roster. And that was the best available player, the best available move they could make. And nobody thought they would be doing this badly coming into this season with Vulcan. Most people had them winning the league, okay, because they fixed their main problem. So I don't know what you want. Sometimes teams don't work. Nobody thought this was a bad roster move. Nobody thought this team was going to be bad. Even them, because they had all of the scrim results, all the practice results that they were seeing coming into this season, which were overwhelmingly positive, like crazy positive. And yeah, scrims don't always translate into stage performance. Scrim bucks are worthless, but you can't think it's going to go bad when you're winning huge numbers of your scrims. So, what else can you do? It's a bummer when these things don't work out.
Mate. Even when they say it's not like it's worthless in the sense that it doesn't count for anything in LCS, but it does indicate something. Like, spoiler, the 10th best team has never actually just won 90% of scrims. That's never happened ever in any fucking league. Like, that's why the Vitality one is significant, because it shows that the players cannot be bad. If even at the end, when they were shit in LEC, they were still beating G2 and Fnatic most of the time. That means they were cracked out. It means something went wrong with coaching on stage, drafting, performance, pressure, how people communicated. That's where it has value. Obviously, in the game, you don't get a trophy for being the best fucking scrim team. We get that.
Yeah. And to your point about Abbedagge, too, signing Abbedagge was the key piece of moving 100 Thieves into winning a title. Without Abbedagge, they don't really accomplish these goals. That was absolutely hugely important. Did it last very long? No, it didn't. Partially because 100 Thieves demolished the roster after Papa Smithy left, but they did make 3 finals in a row. So I do think it's pretty ridiculous to criticize him for what is clearly not a GMing problem. He literally picked up
Reaper, bro, like one of the best coaches ever in LCS. Like, and he got, like you said, he got Vulcan to join a team that looked like maybe it didn't work. He convinced this guy to join the team. Like, I think in general he's done a very good job. He's just had these few regular season games that gone bad. Okay.
Here's what happened. Like, this is actually what happened if you look at when it happened at the time. And you tell me if this is bad GMing. You signed a top 3 hyper carry AD carry within the LCK last year, who is by far the best player on Live Sandbox. You signed the rising star LCK Rookie of the Year, who almost made Worlds as a rookie. You signed literally the World Championship winning coach, who must have been doing something because he squeezed every last ounce of potential out of a DRX roster that had no business winning the World Championship. All right? And then he makes moves. So Spica was also very important. Spica was one of the hottest free agents because of basically, being the best player on a garbage TSM roster for a significant amount of the time. You get Impact, literally the most reliable player, and who plays weak side, so you can strong side into these very powerful imports that you have. And then yeah, you have some visa problems with your support. Then it never comes together, unfortunately. And you have two kind of bad supports on your team. So you know what? You go and get Vulcan, one of the greatest North American supports, if not the greatest North American support, and to fix that problem. How is this bad GMing? Sometimes shit just doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. And you
It's
can't
like
see
what happens. This is the same thing happens to in-game leaders in Counter-Strike, Monty. Right? Because people think they did it all, they were the leader. It's like, at the end of the day, like, all I can do is put you in a good position with good teammates and then tell you what to do. If at the end of the day you don't, in Counter-Strike, click heads, or in League of Legends do the right moves, that's on the player. They're not actually fucking bots doing what the like GM or the coach or the leader says. Like, they have their own minds and their own fucking willpower. So the problem is, like, you can put it, like, it's the same thing with Fnatic last year. That's why I never got the angle that the Dardo guy was a moron. Yeah, he's had some bad lineups. Dude, that lineup he put together last year looked fire on paper. I thought they were going to win the LEC. The one where it's like, he had Razork off an MVP split. Humanoids won championships and been a shot caller. He kept the bot lane of Hylissang and Upset, which used to be the best in the West. And then he brought in Wonder for sort of a bounce back. That looked fucking sick. Like, it doesn't matter that Neville was actually that good. It's sort of like underwhelmed a bit. He still did a great job GMing it. You can't know until they play if they're actually good or not.
Yeah, and there's so many other outside factors, and there was really no criticism about any of the among experts about any of the moves FlyQuest was making, right? And they're even coming into this split because other teams were playing against them in practice. Everybody was really high on FlyQuest, including the other teams and players within the LCS guys. So, what do you want? What do you want in this situation? Shit sucks. You know, all the moves make sense logically. They spent the money. They did everything they could to create a good roster. The synergy just isn't there. It's the same shit that happened with Misfits back in the day when they tried to make that super team. It looked so good, guys. It looked so good. Why wouldn't you get Gorilla as an import player? That's an insane pickup for a European team. And yet, just never worked out. Look at what's happening with Vitality right now. It's not that the individual pieces of that roster are bad. Far from it.
Indeed. Where we're going now?
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go?
I mean, obviously, groups? Yeah, for LEC, we should mention, obviously, the game of the week is the Team Heretics versus BDS one, where actually the funny thing there is I actually think BDS is the better team. So the fact that
I think BDS is the better team too.
This is why I told you, and all I needed, it turned out, was a betting sponsor to make me actually love plebs and nephews and idiots that don't know what they're talking about. Because I love that you all just look at the standings and go, but Heretics is higher up. They must be better than BDS. Like, oh, perfect. Those would be your ones, my dude. And also, some of that, remember, think about Heretics, was with like the busted static Shiv and all that shit. Well, I mean, although Dom did say that they might be on the patch that goes back to that for this group stage. We don't know yet exactly what's happening.
I think it's 13-13.
Yeah, but he said they might revert back to the one before that for some reason in LEC. He just said this on Best Damn League Show. You can go watch it yourself after this episode on this channel, Best Damn League Show. He says it like fairly early on, I think. So basically, I actually don't ever think Heretics was actually better. I think some of their players were better. I think they were well coached in BO1s. But when you come to a BO3, I think BDS is the better team across the board. And I also think, by the way, BDS is an underrated team in terms of coaching. I do think that striker guy who's like the strategic coach or whatever, who was in Carmine Corp, looks like he worked miracles all those years with different rosters, getting his players ports, coming back. Dude, he even got Reckless to win a fucking EU Masters when this guy was a bomb. I got his name in again. Quickly go, Twitch chat, start writing, start putting comments. Put the comment. If you're really angry with me, show me, guys, really teach me a lesson and put a comment below in YouTube. And really just go off on me. Don't hold back. Just fucking go ham. And then if someone replies and rebuts you, just fucking reply to that guy. You're not just going to let him just talk about Reckless that way. Tell you what, oh, please, it hurts. Oh, don't keep wrecking me with engagement. Oh, shit, what's that? The only thing in esports that makes money is engagement and eyeballs. Oh, shit, please, no more, please. Give me a break. Give me a break. Like I always said, mate, here's the thing. Some people, some people play the violin. Some people can conduct an orchestra. I just play Twitter. That's my accordion, as it works. It's annoying, obviously. Some annoying thing that you don't really. You wish the guy in the street. It's like in my area,
I like
in the UK. There used to be a guy who would come. I won't say his background, but you could probably guess. He didn't actually know how to play a flute. He just had a flute, and he would play one shitty that like. He would just do that in the hopes that one person hears part of it and gives him like a penny or something. But if you stood nearby, like you're waiting for someone to come out of the shop, it's just him doing that for like the whole time, and you actually just want to just be like. It's like, this is testing my sanity right now. I feel like I'm in a fucking prisoner war camp or something in Vietnam. What is going on right now? Like, and it was just driving you crazy, mate. That was like some Saw challenge or something.
It's like the CIA torture where they just play the same song on loudspeaker at you for 3 days straight, don't let you sleep. So when it comes to LEC and it comes to BDS, I think what people have kind of forgotten about this roster is, sure, they didn't have the greatest group stage, but the fundamentals of why they made it to the finals are still there. And their loss against Heretics was with a substitute instead of Adam in the top lane, which makes an enormous difference in this matchup in particular, where Evie is very susceptible to getting killed or outplayed.
Adam will fuck him up and solo kill him, I guarantee you right now.
Yeah. So then the question becomes, well, how does Heretics win? Well, again, we've said this many times. VTO is a Yuumi lover. Not that he plays Yuumi, but a lot of his performances that got him MVP were Yuumi in the game because it allows him to hyper carry in the late game. If we are on 13-13, the pick rate of Yuumi has dropped significantly. Static Shiv isn't going to be that different as applied to 80 carries, which probably will affect Heretics less. But this is a team that certainly has overperformed, but when it comes to playoffs and it comes to the ability for BDS to place pressure onto the top side of the map, and that opens up a lot of room for Crownshot to get fed and carry these games, I would rather have Crownshot as my very fed hyper carry than Flacket. And Heretics is very creative, and I think that's where they have gotten their advantages. But in a best of 5, I think it's going to be very hard for them to hide their flaws. And Heretics is another team that, because of their unique play style, just like Misfits before with VTO, they often win best of 1s because it's harder to prepare for them. Misfits didn't do well in best of 5s.
If you've ever seen the LCK or the LPL, so most of you can just tune out now and just pretend you have. The whole thing about BO3s that's great is even if the underdog gets the bullshit game 1 win with a unique draft or move, if you're really good like JDG or fucking Genji, you have 2 games left to just fucking take care of business and go, well, you had your game, now it's time for the real better team to take over. And it happens routinely.
It's also that you have had 2 weeks to prepare for your opponent.
Oh, it's wild in that sense. Like, you don't know how deep these guys can go in that regard. Like, you can look at every single fucking game, break down all the drafts. You can have a whole tree on your blackboard. Like, these are all the possible draft scenarios. And then I'll throw that in as well. It looks way more to me like it's Heretics that needs to get certain champions on a certain players than it is the guys over on fucking BDS. Like, even if you do the meme and ban out Adam's 2 champions, bro, against Evie, he could play a Renekton. He could play a Sion or some shit like that. He's going to be fine. So it's not going to be a problem in that regard. Like, I don't think he's a top player, but he's certainly fine in this particular matchup. He's going to be the better player even.
It's also that he just enables BDS's style. You don't have to think that Adam is the best player, because the thing that matters most about Adam is that he can play top laners without teleport, and he can provide immense pressure, which forces so it does one of 2 things. It either allows him to get solo kills because he has combat summoners and he can actually just fully engage, and he's playing carry champions, whether it's an Olaf or a Darius or what have you. But the thing he does is that if he's not doing that, he's drawing jungle pressure topside, which enables Crownshot to farm. It enables them to stack dragons. And the key part of this is when you don't have TP, it is so helpful to have a dragon lead, because you can actually just force them to fight you at dragons for the rest of the game if you're already 2 or 3 dragon stacks up, right? Otherwise, the lack of TP really hurts you. The question becomes, is Heretics the team where that is going to be a huge problem? Like, the weakness is there. If Evie can't deal with this issue, then BDS just controls these games from start to finish. They're going to have a very interesting strategy, I think, to stop BDS. I just think this matchup it's not that I think BDS is the best team in the LEC, far from it. I just think this matchup is really bad for Heretics.
Also, let's be real. It's not like Ebby ever actually plays safe. He also thinks he's really good and goes for kills and fucking 1v1 outplays. Like, there is going to be some blood in the top lane, guys. Like, I'm telling you right now, like, my joke is Adam always goes fucking pushed up. Like, here's why he ready for a fucking classic, like, pantomime level joke. Why does Adam never go even? Because he's Adam, obviously. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, in this scenario, if you actually wanted him to go even, you'd have to take one of his ribs out. Throwing my rib cage into full view. Shout out Gabby Durden there. Look up the video. Look up that music video. Rib cage parentheses awakening by Gabby Durden.
There
Look
you
it
go.
up. It's a real music video on YouTube.
The meta of casters making music videos.
Link that in the VOD. Link that to give her all the traffic. It's all good.
Dracos too. The meta of the musical artist crossover is becoming very interesting within the casting crew. Although I will say a lot of these guys have never bothered to really do anything outside of cast the game, create their own content, what have you, stream a lot of the time. So credit to them. I give them credit that they are
anyone who tries some of the multimedia approach.
Fair play. I like it. Otherwise, like, do we think anybody but G2 or Fnatic really has a shot at taking the title here? Fnatic's rise has been really inspiring.
To me, the exciting thing is that Fnatic looks really good. Like, if it was right now, today, we had to I would vote Noah the MVP of the league. Why wouldn't I? He's a rookie. Yep. He's a stud.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You could be a KDA player and get 0 deaths, but also carry the game. Oh, Fnatic fans would be like, what the fuck? This is not normal. Someone check his keyboard. Like, fucking hell. Fucking hell.
It is the best possible outcome. It is the best possible outcome, especially that a Korean player who isn't famous just waltzes in and does this. First off, just shows how insanely deep the Korean talent pool is.
Yes.
But also, think about this, guys. You have this guy who had like 90 KDA at parts of the group stage after playing, 4, 5, 6 games. He comes in to replace Rekkles and then is also topping the league in terms of DPM.
Yes.
Really impressive stuff from Noah. And it just
a great name as well, by the way. We've got Adam, we've got Noah. All you need to know now is who's Judas, who's the one who betrays him. Oh, Rekkles, my bad. Yeah, sorry. The joke was obvious there. It's obvious. Judas Iscariot, shout out Judas Iscariot one time. 12 shekels, 12 pieces of silver, or whatever it was.
Well, if you do believe in Gnosticism, and you've read the Gospel of Judas and the other Gnostic Gospels, he actually was the most important and most loyal.
Yeah.
It was the most loyal of the apostles, because remember, the only way to absolve sin was for Jesus to die on the cross. Therefore, somebody had to sell him out. And in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus comes to Judas and says, I need you to sell me out to do this. And even though you are going to look like complete shit as a result of doing this, you are my most loyal follower. So please do this. And he does.
Basically, if Rekkles hadn't sold Hylissang out, Hylissang wouldn't have been freed and gone to Mad Lions, go to 2 finals, win, go to MSI, So you decide whether that would. Obviously, if you really watched MSI, you might be Gnostic yourself and think that these gods and demiurges are evil, because what Mad Lions did there was a travesty and they should actually be tried in the Hague, in the Court of Human Rights. So, because some of those games were criminal, they were war crimes.
Yeah, I guess Noah doesn't have the highest DPM anymore. He's only at 719 compared to Karzi's 910, which is very impressive, actually, for Karzi.
Mad Lions wins games, have to be Karzi. Surely that's his style, right?
Sure. And also he learned how to play Aphelios, so that's fun. But yeah, Noah hasn't been bottom, has not been the bottom of the and at one point was way up there. I'm actually going to check the spring season. I mean, the problem is that these are all very small sample sizes for the most part.
By the way, if you're watching the VOD now, I just right now released on my personal channel a video where that gamer doc, Lindsay Miglior, who works for EG, who was involved in all the shenanigans. All you need to know is this. It's 2 hours long. Here you go. Bon voyage. Enjoy that. That's 2 hours of your time. Put it this way, it's better than it's better than Indiana Jones, I'm guessing. So watch this instead. The actual real. The real.
What inspired the takedown videos? Because I mean the one about Frankie was great recently. You've been on a tear.
What happened was, nobody, by the way, in CSGO, I didn't even know this person existed, Monty. They're just because they're the director of performance, like whoever hears about that role. What happened was, in CSGO, EG had already mismanaged their team. Right. And crucially, Kassad was interviewed. It was like Riot with D-Man, mate. They were just abusive.
Right, I remember.
They interviewed him for like months at a time, and he had to keep coming back. And they kept telling him, by the way, privately, like, don't worry, it's going really great. Like you're one of the main candidates. We're really thinking it's going to come together. Like, just wait for it. And then eventually, at the end, they were just like, yeah, pass. And so what happened was Cassard, unsurprisingly, when they were then absolutely one of the worst teams ever to play CS from a major org, still are, by the way. They're on something mad, like a 9 best-of-3 losing streak recently. They were terrible. Cassard basically then would make some he would make some snide comments on Twitter and sort of be like, great job by Evil Geniuses when they would lose. So this person, instead of being like, well, my job's director of performance, I could never talk shit about them losing. No, she decided to pop off. And she just came at Cassard and started saying mad shit. Like, you'll see this in the video. Her opening gambit, Monty, was to say, sad to see that your enthusiasm has waned for our project. But I guess people say anything in interviews. So she just straight up unethically leaked that in interviews, he was actually confident if he got the job that they'd be a really good project. What a piece of shit. And then when I dared to comment, Monty, she said something mad, why everyone at EG just thinks this. And it was like a gif of someone why are you so obsessed with me? So then I did a quick search because remember, Monty, I'm supposed to be the boomer, but I'm the only one who knows Twitter advanced search exists and uses it. So I did a little search, Monty, and you're not going to believe this. Boy. I never knew this person existed. This last year in 2022, because remember 2021 was when I had all that thing where I was like, I am esports. For something like 5 months, every time she was ever doing anything, no joke, literally it would say stuff like, I just fucking put a plug into the socket. I am esports. She would just do I am esports over and over and over and over. So obviously it's the other way around. I triggered her. And then she had the gall when Cassard said something else to imply that Cosme and Cassard have now commented. She goes, it's not the first time to Cassard that I've had a middle-aged white man obsessed with me. And so all I thought was, you know what? There we go. Get out the pen. Just put you on the list. Okay, we will process you in due. It's like the DMV. Take a number. We'll process you in due time. Sorry, I've got to get to Frankie first. I've got a couple of players on the list, but you know what? I always make time for Wayne Grow. I don't. I could get away. I'm off to New Zealand with that woman out of fucking season 3 of Goliath. Straight fire reference. But instead, I'll be like, you know what, honey? It's all right. We've got time for the private flight. Let's make time for Wayne Grow. Let's go take care of Wayne Grow.
You know what?
Also, I found, and it's mad. This is essentially the real reason you got to watch the video, because loads of the tweets aren't about Danny, but if you know the context of what happened, Monty, they're mental. Her other thing on Twitter, there's 2 angles that are going to blow your mind. One, she routinely, every 6 months, complains that the esports industry is full of people who've only been hired for experience and who are frauds and are bad at their jobs, and even calls them chronic underperformers. By the way, this is almost Frankie levels of lack of self-awareness. And then the other angle, this is even more mad, is even though she's part of the fucked up thing with Danny and forcing him to play and then treating these players in CSGO and League of Legends like shit. I've got a great story from a League of Legends Academy player. Even though she did all that, all her tweets are that poser shit from sixth form / college where people are like, be the change you want in the world. Be nicer to people. Just why is this country divided politically? Because people can't express their opinions without being offensive or being offended. Learn to give criticism and take criticism. And then she can't do any of it, mate. She can't ever walk the walk. It's so wild. So it's a banger. There's a reason it's 2 hours long, boys. I wouldn't waste your time. This is one where I have to understand, when I come for the vampires, I have to make sure stake through the heart, salt around the body, crush the skull, silver all around, and then I enclose them in a fucking tomb 1,000,000 depth miles below the earth with fucking onion and garlic all around it, and I make sure they're never coming back after that. Looks like Frankie. Tell you what, she's gotten way better on Twitter now. There you go, love. Well done. Glad I could motivate you. I'm the performance director here, homie. You might be the senior director of performance of EG. I'm the senior director of performance of esports, motherfucker. You know why? Because I am it.
So, you know what I don't understand about these people, Thorin, is if they just shut the fuck up on social media, none of this happens.
Oh no, she also does the Frankie thing where she keeps telling on herself. She keeps adding extra details for me to give me more fuel for it. It's mad. That's the other thing. If they tweeted 1/10 as much, I wouldn't even have the material. Where's my ammo? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Charles Barkley said that years ago. He said the reason he doesn't have Twitter is because half the time you're just giving ammunition to your enemies to hate on you. And he's right. You are.
He is right. 100%.
Ammo for their gun.
But it is absolutely wild to me that these people such as Nicole LaPointe Jameson and GamerDoc feel like they have to be upfront personalities, right? No, that's why, what's so baffling is Nicole is putting herself in these music videos for Worlds. Nobody knows or cares who she is. You could have hired any number of people from EG's history. Go fucking dig up Idra and put him in as the mascot of EG. Use your actual money that you have for your content creator collective, instead of just paying off Danny for the things that you did to him, first off, treat him well. Second off, use that money to hire people who can be the face of your brand. What is this obsession with these people at EG who do not have forward-facing jobs to be these faces and to be the warriors in terms of their content and on social media? It makes no sense. You just open yourself up to criticism.
Well, the real joke is what tells you they're frauds in esports. This is how Frankie got herself in trouble. She clearly didn't know who I was in CSGO, and she didn't know what CSGO was like. So she came in like this, like a bull in a china shop, and just thought, I'll just fucking run around saying crazy, outlandish conclusions and mega bold statements. And what happens then is the person it turns out you're fucking with, you're like, he's just some journalist. And it's like, wait a minute, what's the name there? So it's like Robert Lewis or something. Who the fuck's he? And it just turns out you've just fucked off like the guy who's actually going to like fucking bury you metaphorically. And then as a result, yeah, how does it end up? Does anyone ever, after years of this shit, just go like, I wish I sort of hadn't done that now. I wish I'd sort of fucking played it cool. I wish I'd used the freeze pipe and just cooled my shit down and just had an enjoyable, cool experience using the freezepipe.com 10% off LFN.
Maybe I should just focus on not being garbage at my main job instead of just tweeting all the time pointlessly for no upside. There's no upside to doing what they did. There was zero upside for peacocking on Twitter from GamerDoc about because part of the downfall was that she was saying that they were successful and then they completely took a nosedive in CSGO, or for being in the music videos from Nicole LaPointe Jameson. What was the upside to that? Tell me what the best case scenario of doing that was. What's the best case?
Self-aggrandizement.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Unnecessary.
Also,
completely unnecessary.
If you want to know, it's not just like me wrecking it. There's also facts that you might like to know. Like under her watch, I looked when she took over as director of performance. On her watch, with enormous salaries, people getting paid 20 to 30K, she managed a performance of they have won 5 LAN best of 3s and they lost 23. In those partner competitions, they come last and second last all the time. All the time. That's outrageous. If you don't know how bad that is, like, just go look it up. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. But anyway, there's a lot in there. There's a lot of,
The EG hate will never end until they are held accountable for their crimes.
I mean, it's like everything. People don't get it. I just use siege mentality. It's like, right, we're going to war, right? Get the fucking towers. Listen, we've got all our supplies. I can wait for years, mate. I'll wait until eventually. Spoiler, I'll just give this little teaser because it's Illegal Legends, so no one will know in CSGO. All you need to know is, you know how the GOAT of CSGO flamed me, Monty?
Yep.
Oh, don't worry. Even he's broken now. I'll win them all, mate. I'll win them all. They all come to me privately. They all do that back channel, the little reach out, and it's like, okay. Because I've always said, listen, I'm quite magnanimous, Monty. I will allow anyone to surrender unconditionally on my terms. That's always on them too.
I'm generous of you.
I'm not like Genghis Khan. I don't have to kill you and smite your children to the
no, actually, Genghis Khan, that's a bad reference. Genghis Khan did allow people to surrender to him unconditionally.
No. Because famously, one tactic he would use is he'd send people ahead who'd say, just surrender, and then he'd kill your whole village anyway. That's a real story. You can look it up. Because his whole shit, by the way, was like fear and intimidation. Like, supposedly, he's so fucked up. There's a story that a guy came to him and like some like other tribe leader or something and got all the way up to him and tried to kill him. And because he tried to kill him, he was like, you will become one of my best generals. And it's like, is this like Conan or something? What are you talking about? Like, what is the rule of the jungle or something here? Like, this is mental, boys. This is mad.
So any other factors about LEC playoffs? I mean, we're just kind of waiting for it to happen right now. LPL is just kind of riding out its last week. These are all going to be junk games in LPL because for the most part, the playoff race is effectively set. Like, it would take a miracle to knock JDG out of the top 2 spots. People read way too much into their loss that we saw last week. I mean, it's just LPL randomness. I think they're going to get together perfectly fine by the time they reach the playoffs. It only matters if they reach top 2 for the purposes of advancing as far as you can into the playoff bracket automatically when it comes to seeding. The real interesting thing is going to be, what happens with the playoffs, because like I said, LNG and Top are also kind of virtually locked into their spots as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of garbage in LPL this week, unfortunately.
To me, the only angle in LEC other than that is actually this, and it goes in Group A, the one with G2, Koi, Team Heretics, BDS, is just who's third. If I assume G2 and BDS win, Is Koi or Heretics the fourth team there? Because the thing is, I actually don't know. Like, Team Heretics and BO1s look good, but I actually think, like, Koi, they're not good, but Larsson's very good. Sometimes you can get the odd game out of, Shy. It's because I keep calling him the Shygender, so it's fucked up how I say his name. Shigenda. I think Peach is absolute fucking nothing over on XL. Malrang's almost as bad. Like, I don't know. That's a hard one. That's a Sophie's choice, man. I don't know. I want it to be Heretics, sort of, because I do want, like, Peter Dunne to be justified. And then also, my hope is this. He's just piecemeal building it. He said he had a 2-year vision, Monty. If next year he gets a good top laner,
we saw this with EG.
All of a sudden, you got a real team, haven't you?
We saw this with EG. He's very good at iteratively building rosters. It is clear that this team is like one good top laner, one Odo Omne. Odo Omne would be fire on this roster.
As long as Jankos doesn't get scooped away, he can do it. That's the real hope. You got to hope he doesn't get bought in off season. But aside from that, the rest of the pieces are there, mate.
Yeah, it is a good team. They just have one serious flaw that prevents them from being as flexible as they otherwise could be. And if you want a weak side top and you can get Odo Omne away from XL, I think this roster could be really promising. But I'm not seeing them doing a whole lot immediately. And I also think that Peter Dunne already has been redeemed. Like, look at the difference between this roster, this split compared to other splits. The growth is clearly there.
First split, the one where it was already Jankos, essentially. Like, they even got out. They're not coming last place in those ones either. Like, XL Super Team's coming last. They're still making groups every time. That's actually legit. Like, he always overperforms with his squads, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the amount of success Peter Dunne has had and the ability for him to read the strengths of players and then create both rosters and strategies used by those rosters in order to maximize the value of the players that he had. We saw it with EG. And if you know what you're looking for and you know the kind of way that he slowly introduces these tactics so that the players understand them, he's just really good at developing and broadening a roster skill set over time. He doesn't try and overload them with every strategy in the book. He wants to do one thing really well and then introduce new layers to that over time so that they expand the toolbox that these players have within a game. He's very deliberate. And it's great to see.
Also, great talk show guest.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, since we're talking about it, I'll just reference that. If people don't know, the original reason all the way back that I did anything with EG is because they blacklisted me from having people like Peter Dunne on my shows.
Yep.
How did that age? That was a good move, wasn't it? How do you like that investment you made? You paid dividends, but not the ones you wanted, eh? Not the ones you wanted.
It's just the people who do not understand the space at all, Thorin. And they think that they can just get away with it with no consequences. It's also just not a good tactic if you care about advertising or your players or your coaches or your brand. I mean, to put this in perspective, guys, Last Free Nation in the past year has done over 10 million podcast downloads. So you decide whether that's good publicity for your orgs and your teams or not. We've been doing really well in terms of viewership. Been doing very well. So, ignore or blacklist at your own peril.
Also, I'll just tell you a little story. Shall I actually tell you the secret? Because one thing I learned in esports money is because the majority of secrets involve like single-pointed focus, really hard work, mastering your craft. You can tell people them. They don't do them, so you don't really lose any competitive advantage. Right? Here's the actual secret to how you get someone in journalism. It's like a movie. In the movie, they have to have a relatable reason as to why the person is going to the ends of the earth. Like, why does the cop, even when he's told to turn his badge and his gun in because he's got too close to the case, why does he still hunt down the villain, even though now he's just a citizen and could go to prison for life? Why does the journalist who's being threatened with car bombings and then his dog gets killed and his family are threatened, why does he keep doing it just for the sake of doing the truth, right? They know a normal person can't relate. Well, I wouldn't just do it for the truth. They have to do it like, it was his partner that was killed in a shootout if you're the cop. It was like, people threatened like his fucking people in his country if it's a journalist. As you see as an esports journalist, you don't have that level of scale, right? It's actually one of the good things about the industry. So here's what you do for real. Now, because I have an amazing memory, I can just do this automatically. What you do is this. You remember the thing they did to you and you don't let it go, which would be the healthy thing if you were a human. As a journalist, you do the opposite. You intentionally take that and you keep it close to you. It's like Vincent Hanna, the Al Pacino character, says in Heat. It's like, that keeps me on the edge where I've got to be. So what you do is every time you see that person's name or the org they're associated with, you run it through in your mind again. They said this, they did this, they're liars, they've done this. And what it does is that fuel recreates. It's why trauma exists. The problem with trauma essentially is the human mind doesn't just remember, it like goes back to that point. It remembers actually what it was like to be hurt in an accident, to be like oppressed by someone, to feel like you were powerless or you're dying, and recreating in your mind those feelings. This is why it isn't just a movie. You have that feeling, it's a real thing. You feel scared. You feel your heartbeat. It's real. So you do that to yourself, essentially, and you keep reminding yourself, just like the Punisher would, that his family was killed or something. And that is the fuel every day to get up and go and look through 500 tweets, to go and search every article and read shit puff pieces about some people until you get the quote that you need. And you get that quote, and that's all you take out. This is where the rookie journalists, like idiot you know who, fuck it up and they put too much stuff in the article. No. You take out all the fat no one cares about. That's for you. That's like the iceberg principle. You're just looking for the meat. You're looking for the really good line, and you might have to search. This is why I always tell Richard, mate, you'll always be the guy doing this, because I don't want to do this for stories that aren't really motivating. Do you know how shit it is to go away and actually not even have a website you can do this on? Have to like contact people's like schools and be like, was this person an alumni here? Then contact people on the honor roll. Like, did you actually go to school? That's the amount of work you can do there, guys. Sometimes you never get anything. Sometimes it's a dead end. You do like 10 hours and you realize, wait, what's the opportunity cost here? I've just lost 10 hours worth of earning potential to try and nail this scumbag. So I only do it in a few cases, but I am on some fucking like, I'm like the Lone Ranger, mate. I always get my man. When I'm going for them at the end, I hunt them till the end. I always get my man. I always get my man.
All right. Any other LOL topics you want to talk about, or do you want to do some questions?
Let's do some questions.
All right. Let's take a quick break, guys, and we'll do viewer questions.
Right, we're back for viewer questions. Obviously, as usual, we don't mean Twitch viewers, although we do appreciate the primes. Any primers in chat? Whatever, I think streamers say, I think I heard it once, or something. Right, obviously, if you want to ask questions, you have to subscribe to our Discord, the Last Free Nation one, and then there's a channel for questions specifically for this show.
Yep. And it's one of the best ways to support us as well, because we get 90% of the revenue. Discord is actually cool like that. So if you guys are thinking about subscribing to us on Twitch, with real money, not your Twitch Prime money, don't do that. Subscribe on Discord instead. You get more benefits, and it's better for us. Thank you. Shout out to Twitch for continuing to destroy their own monetization models. What are some roster changes that you heavily criticized / questioned, but turned out to be a slam dunk success? Interesting. I mean, it's probably quite a few, because you can never know how things are going to turn out.
Yeah, what would be a really big one? I'm trying to think like the biggest one. There's got to be some crazy ones that I didn't see coming. Oh, I know an obvious one. I mean, it's tied into that story where it's actually one of the reasons I turned down the job of being their coach. When they told me in Fnatic, like, we're just bringing Yellow Star back, and then we're going to get there's this Korean top laner that's in like Samsung Red, the C team, and he's going to, I was like, you know what? No thanks. I was here to coach SOAS and fucking spec but it's not there. So I was like, nah. And I even did a video where I was like, Fnatic lost the offseason. They not only won the first split, they then obviously had that 5-game series with SKT at MSI, which at the time was blowing everyone's minds. Then they had a perfect 18-0 split in summer and went to semis of Worlds. So you know what? I think I'll take that one on the chin. I reckon they got me on that one, didn't they? They wrecked me. I was sort of right about Hootie, but just not at the time. Not at the time.
I mean, probably anything to do with Smeb, right? Because Smeb was legit the worst top laner in LCK.
Like, hated on the move as much though. I'm trying to think of like big name moves. Like there must have been some like. Is there any like TSM signings you thought would just be dead in the water, but actually were good or won or whatever?
I don't know. I mean, I think for the most part, TSM had like unknown players. It wasn't that they were signing a big player that I thought would be bad and then turned out to be good, right?
Well, the joke is this, Monty. If we're trying to think of good ones, like who's actually been way better than you expect as a player? I'm trying to think who actually that would even fit the bill of. What about in LEC? There's got to be someone.
Who would be way better? I mean, you could argue like the perks to ADC move, but that was a role swap, not a.
I mean, no one knew
not
that would necessarily work. You wouldn't think they'd win MSI when you first split when you roll up to AD, would you? That's pretty wild in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not. I guess it's. Would you count that as a roster change? It changes part of your roster.
Yeah.
Sort of. Sort of. Does that count?
I think what's a good one? There's got to be some good LCK ones, surely. Because who's actually been way better than you'd think in LCK?
Like I said, Smeb is the obvious one. He literally went from worst at his position to best in his position.
Whatever. Then.
I mean, yeah, it's actually hard because I think a lot of the players were just unknowns. I would say there's been way more times that we've been right about, or we've been wrong about hyping up rosters and teams that turned out to be complete shit. Especially hilariously this year with Vitality and Excel turning out to be so bad, and also FlyQuest. This has definitely been the year of on paper good teams underperforming.
Well, I'll give you one. I definitely did not think this Mad Lions team would do the shit they've done in LEC this split. Like. Sure. You're putting together Kazi and Inting Hillasang together with like fucking the Chaser guy no one even knew. Like, there's no way that if you'd have told me, I'll bet heavily they don't make one final, never mind win a title. Really good. That one's way better than they expect. Way better.
Why do you think okay, hold up. Why do you think the Gulf states end up becoming esports regions like the Nordic states? Both regions have shit weather, so people are inside more often, geographically close to each other. Bahrain and Doha all have the fastest internet in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see this changing anytime soon as the oil money is flowing in? Well, they're trying really hard. I mean, Saudi obviously is putting a lot of money into this. They're hosting their own tournaments with massive prize pools like Gamers 8, which is something you guys have probably never heard of. But they continue to try. I mean, the CS qualifiers for that are going on right now. They are, and especially with Neom, like the idea of building Neom was to also integrate, to have a tech sector in the Middle East that would also probably host a lot of esports events. That's why they went out and wanted to sponsor Blast and LEC, was to convince people to come there, most likely for esports events. We've seen Middle Eastern esports teams startup, and in fact we've seen LEC has like stealth rebranded to League of Legends EMEA Championship, not just European Championship.
That's virtue signaling and a half as well. They go, which teams from Africa or Middle East or wherever in it, you fucking idiot. Go on, show me. Oh, zero.
But they're prepping for it, Thorin. They're prepping for it. I think it's only a matter of time until we see an LEC final in the Middle East. I think that might be coming next year. When
it does, I'll just give everyone a quick warning. You know what I've been doing to all the talent who came out and talked out against Carlos, but then say nothing when they're embroiled in some shit? Spoiler, all you LEC talent, you're on the list too. The second they do the event in the Middle East, I'm coming for all of you. Even the ones I like, I'm coming for you. Because I'm going to teach people a lesson, which is if you do this, you know how you want people to get cancelled and have consequences? You're going to get the consequences. I'm going to show you what it's like. So the second that happens, it's going to... By the way, spoiler, I won't say names now, but some of them already worked with ESL, Monty, after they did that thing of like, I put my job on the line for LEC. Then they turn around and work for ESL, who was owned by Saudi Arabia. Well, which is it, mate? Which is it? You know what I mean? So yeah, almost certainly they will, Monty. I mean, I know they dodged that bullet recently when they turned down Astralis getting bought by Falcons, who's like Saudi related or whatever. It's that guy from FIFA, like I can't remember his name, Mosseri or something. I can't remember his name. It's a famous name. People know I'm on about. Basically, they did that, and people think, well, of course. There's so many Reddit comments I've got saved for Thorin versus Reddit where they're like, well, of course they wouldn't let the Saudis buy into esports. I've told you a million times, Richard Lewis got the information that they were totally fine with that deal. They just understood because the casters made a shitstorm. It's like, for PR, we may as well say no for now, basically. But they sort of implied, like, you can do it later, basically. So it'll come eventually. It's almost certain. Also, on this question, the weird thing about the setup of the question is, he makes it sound like the Saudis have been doing this since 1999. Like, they only started a few years ago. Like, stuff like
they'll be there.
The shit with Dubai, like, have you ever seen a picture like 20 years ago? There was nothing there. Like, there's a desert.
Yeah.
Like, they built all that shit recently. So, in theory, like Monty says, because they're going to make it a hub, as long as enough people there want to play, then they will get good players and they will have a seat and they'll import players. If there's another thing, just like Ronaldo players in the Saudi League, if people don't know, for hundreds of millions, and they get a bunch of other European football players, they'll do that as well. Like, here's the thing. You know how at the moment, sorry to break your hearts, LCS fans, you know how I've heard people like Reckless, Humanoid, because they joke like, I'll go to LCS for the paycheck. No, in the future, mate, you'll go to Dubai and you'll play for 10x your salary. You'll play for like $10 million a year. That's what you'll do at the end of your career. It'll be like the MLS is in soccer, basically.
There have been there have been increasingly large tournaments in the Middle East. ESL has been holding events in Dubai. Like I said, Gamers8 is a massive new endeavor by the Saudi government with millions of dollars in prize pool across a variety of titles. Even just domestic events for the Middle East have been picking up. Like, you guys don't pay attention to these events, but they really are trying to encourage players to play. And by the way, it's one of the only places in the world where they are encouraging young people to play esports. You might think that happens in Korea. It doesn't. Korean parents don't like it. The Korean government doesn't necessarily like it that kids are playing esports. Okay, it's just part of the culture. In the Middle East, they want people. The government is paying for these massive prize pools. So with that kind of incentive, guys, give it a few years. We're going to start to see some good players coming out of those regions, and we're going to start to see more tournaments out there. They want it to happen. It will happen. What's your favorite action adventure franchise? Examples like Terminator, RoboCop, Indiana Jones, Bond, Mad Max, excluding the really horrible recent entries in some of these series.
I mean, if you can just target it, like the first 2 Terminator movies are really good, obviously.
Oh, great.
Yeah, those are bangers.
The first 3 Indiana Jones movies are good.
Sure.
Right? I love that genre. I love the Lost World, supernatural artifacts with a basis in history. I think Indiana Jones fucking rules.
Mate, even those like Nick Cage National Treasures are good if you can
they're fun.
Some cheese Nick Cage.
Fun.
Yeah, they're just a fun angle out there. Oh, it's actually, look on the back of the document, Bill of Independence. So like, give me a fucking break. But it is funny though. And like that's great. Those are the movies I watch when I get the freeze pipe out. It's like, let's put some Nicolas Cage, one of my go-to when I'm high people to watch movies of. So his oeuvre is fantastic when you've got THC in the old system, mate. Of course.
I mean, a lot of these old franchises are just really good because they were simple. There was one plot line. They developed they focused on the one plot line that made sense. It doesn't make sense in like being realistic, but made sense in the context of the world that it was in. And they focused on just kind of developing characters and having snappy dialogues. It's just amazing how many stupid plot lines they try and jam into one movie these days, when you could just literally just cut out half of the plot and it would be a better film and at least easier to follow.
I've never watched any of the Creed movies. I don't know how they are, but I was a fan of the original Rocky series. I thought some of those movies were bangers, mate. Like at least 2 or 3 of those are really good movies. In fact, not least because, as you've seen with other boxing movies, it's quite hard to make a boxing movie actually compelling and interesting. So I always thought like those movies, it's even from the score on down, like they're just incredible at like stirring the emotions. Like they're fucking epic. The original Rocky, by the way, forget all the sequels even. The original Rocky just standalone is a really good movie. It's just a fucking film classic.
Also, just a very simple plot and relatable characters. What is the worst PR mistake?
I'll give you a little bonus though. Go on YouTube and look up Anthony Robbins, the motivation guy, telling the story of how Sylvester Stallone got Rocky made. It's heartbreaking. It's an amazing. It's genuinely one of the most. I can't believe they haven't done like a biopic about Sylvester Stallone. That's this story. It's amazing. You'll make you have so much respect for Sylvester Stallone.
He did it all himself, grinded it out. Everybody rejected him, wouldn't take no for an answer, and effectively was absolutely uncompromising in his vision.
He had to sell his dog.
Yeah.
That's part of the story. Just go look it up. I don't want to ruin the whole thing. But just go look it up. It's fucking mega. It's mega.
What is the worst PR mistake in esports? Take this from any angle. It can be a player, coach, org.
I mean, the joke is the obvious one would be Carlos in light of what the actual consequences were. That cost like millions of dollars. He's not in esports anymore. You could go with some more funny ones. Or EG's pretty good. They've done a bunch of good ones. Spoiler, that's why I've done my video today. I think all that shit about Danny, that's aged terribly. What are some other good ones over the... TSM, obviously, where they tried to clap back at us. Then it turned out they outed themselves as doing like fucking the conflict of interest with Double Lift. They're like, no one wants that.
There's all of the problem with esports is this industry is so stupid that there's just too many to pick from. It's constant. So that's why the Four Horsemen exist, guys. It feels like every week there's a PR mistake. Feels like every week. Well, what the fuck is going on right now with Scout in EDG? By the way, guys, I think the Korean team that wanted him was KT. I do know they were very, here's a spoiler for you guys.
Worlds if they'd got him.
My sources in Korea told me last offseason, or two. Let me put this timeline together in my head. 2 off seasons ago, that KT was very heavily pursuing Scout. And when they didn't get Scout, that caused them to put together a cheaper roster, but they were very much intending to spend going into 2022. So I think part of that scandal, now I don't know if Scout signed the deal with KT, but I do know that KT put a deal in front of him. So there's an alternate timeline where Scout would have been on KT in 2022.
Imagine how banger that lineup would be. Because if people don't know, he'd probably be the MVP again, mate. He smurfed again in LPL. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's amazing right now. He's very fun to watch. One of my favorite players to watch at the moment. Most traditional sports have mild snowballing in that the team that's behind has to take more risks and use more stamina to catch up. Meanwhile, many esports snowball hard. Do you like snowball mechanics in general or in specific contexts?
I don't even understand the premise. What sport has snowball mechanics, even mild ones?
Yeah, I think he means rubber.
It's the same. But there isn't any in sports. Like a basket is the same at the end of the game to make as it is at the beginning of the game. You know what I mean?
I think the premise that he's saying is like once you're ahead, you can kind of dawdle on the court, or if you're you're an NFL, if you're in the NFL. Stuff, yeah. So basically, here's the thing. It's hard to make this comparison because traditional sports have finite game time, except for baseball. Baseball's weird, but most other traditional sports have finite game time, where you can kind of, if you're in American football, if you have a lead, you can run the ball to eat time off the clock or do many other things to just kind of grind down your opponent.
That will actually crush your soul if you like me, a Brady critic, is someone calculated that there's a time in the third quarter where if the Falcons just like kneeled on every fucking down,
yes,
they essentially would have won. But they had to actually like throw and like get picks against them and fuck up the downs. Like they actually had to, like, as you know, with fucking Shanahan, they had to fuck it up.
I was so mad at that.
Mathematically could have won the game, basically. The spoiler is, if it was Belichick on the other side, he would have won the game off that. He'd just been a con completely.
I was so pissed, Thorin, about that Super Bowl. So that happened while I was in Korea, and I'm a famous Patriots hater, obviously, as a Broncos fan. And so I was in a bar in Korea at like 10 a.m. because that's when the Super Bowl takes place. And I was quite drunk by halftime. And I was like, woo, 28-3, fuck you, Patriots. And then they came back and it really sucked.
Oh, mate, I was there with you for the 2014 Seahawks one. Do you remember? We were watching it because they were just getting bodied like 3/4 of the way through. We're like, lol, who gives a shit? He's getting wrecked. And then it just got less and less and less funny. And at the end, it was like they did the fucking Malcolm Butler. It was like, turn it off.
Just threw the Russell just throws the interception at the end. Fuck, man.
I know.
Fuck.
But then it's okay because it worked out when he came to the Broncos. So don't worry about that. The man suffering he's caused you on both sides of the balls, muddling it, Monty.
It's all right. Surely it's going to be better this year, Thorin, with Sean Payton. Surely it's going to be better this year.
To be fair, he is Mr. What's that, like Unlimited? Mr. Unlimited, remember?
Oh, God, he's so cringe. Anyway.
Forget that. I'll never be able to forget that. It's so bad.
My wife does that to me, and she reminds me of that all the time. It's so cringe. Anyway, so back to the question. Snowballing mechanics. Do we care about snowballing mechanics?
I am personally.
I'm not a fan of the snowballing and rubber band mechanics, but also the problem is that games are badly designed. In a well-designed game, you do not need heavy rubber band mechanics in esports. The problem with League of Legends,
Brood War, there's no mechanic in that, mate. If you're ahead, you're ahead. If you're behind, you have to come back. Yeah,
right.
Quake,
and the thing,
of them, yeah.
Brood War was very well designed in that there were tactics within the game where you could there were like force multipliers where you could come back. Like, for the most part, you could have an infinite number of Marines, but you are not going to get up a ramp with lurkers at the top of it. That just wasn't going to happen, right? So there were tactics that you could use to come from behind in Brood War that were really great. Good control over scourges versus aerial units, right? Good harassment on people's workers and grinding them, multi-pronged attacks. There were a lot of things you could do in micro and macro that could cause you to come back from behind. The problem with League of Legends is that once a team has a gold lead at 15 minutes, they win almost all of the time. And so they had to introduce, or they felt they had to introduce more, bounties and other rubber band mechanics in order to come back. Or in terms of snowballing, like the snowballing mechanic of having more items and stats than your opponent. So I think it's mostly garbage and bad design, and I'm not a fan of either sports or esports that snowball hard. It's one of the worst parts of League of Legends, I would say, if not the single worst part.
I just
Do
hate
you
it
mind?
in general.
Do you mind loss bonuses in CS:GO?
I mean, in theory, because the way the economy works, like if someone was up 10-0 and there was no like cap to the money, if you had like 50k each, it would make the game sort of a bit silly in some regard. So I don't hate it. The problem in the modern day was this: it used to have an extremely hard reset where it could fuck you if you lost one key round, and then they made it too weak. And the annoying thing is they refused to just incrementally test it out, like move the loss bonus back 2 steps and see how that goes. So I feel like there's a sweet spot in the middle you could go to. It's why every game lasts 1 million hours now, and every map 16, 12, 16. 14. They made it too much like that. So I feel like I don't mind it. It's not bad for CS specifically. It sort of works with the concept of the game. But I do think that essentially they've done it too extreme both directions.
What, in your opinion, are some of the most over and underrated decades in terms of movies released during that time? What do you think is the reason for these decades being over and underrated?
Easy. When I did my top 10 movies of all time, I'm not a poser, Monty. Yeah, I love Citizen Kane. I love movies that are like French movies from the 70s. But if I actually had to sit down, and I did this and wrote down my 10 favorite movies, they're all from the 90s, the 2000s, and some in the 2010s. So I actually think, this is going to shock people, I think those decades are underrated because everyone wants to go, no, it's just the 70s, bro. Like it all became commercial shit. Like, no, there was a lot of commercial shit because there's so many more movies made though. Like the 90s is mad underrated. Man, the amount of movies in the 90s are unbelievable. Even some of the like sort of like smaller movies that like some fucker like Mickey Rourke or someone's in, like some of those are just like really good watches in their own right, even though they'll never be a big box office movie, you know?
I mean, I think the 80s and 90s are generally underrated for film for the reason I said earlier. There is a purity of storyline to those movies that makes sense. And they may be more formulaic, but the formulas are generally pretty well executed and they don't have a lot of clutter. Like they have memorable characters, memorable lines, plot lines that are easy to follow and not super convoluted. And that's what I like about those decades in particular, is that the focus of the movie is on one thing or one theme or just a couple of themes. And like the actors were also quite good, I think, during that time. I enjoyed those decades quite a bit. Have either of you read or watched The Expanse? I have not read it. It's my shit for sure. I love The Expanse. Have you seen all of The Expanse?
No, I think I watched until sometime. I think I maybe watched up to season 4. And the problem was, one, I think I was watching some of them when I was high, so I can't remember which episode I was on. I hate to go back and like rewatch an episode. Like, oh, fuck, sure. I've already seen this one. So I'd have to like properly sit down and look at like the episode guide and see which one I stopped at. And the other problem I had with it as a show was, I told you, I think not only is season 1 bad, but the problem is the main character from season 1 actually was the best character in the show. And he obviously, with spoiler, only lasts like a couple of seasons in. That guy and that actor is pretty legit. So I wished he'd have continued on, basically. He had a good ending to his storyline, but he was the best part of the show to me. I actually think the real main guy, the main protagonist, that matter, is garbage.
Oh, he's terrible.
I think he's the worst part of the show.
He is. So there's 2 problems, which is that Stephen Strait, the actor who plays Holden, is a bad actor, and then also that the character of Holden is a bad and very boring character. However, the rest of the characters in that show are generally quite interesting, especially Amos, I think, is a fascinating character throughout the course of that show. And the thing about The Expanse is a lot of people don't like the first season because it's a film noir in space. And then as of season 2, it turns into like a giant political space opera. And the genre switches so dramatically that people... my wife, for example, doesn't like film noir, so really dislikes the first season, but really enjoyed the rest of the series. So it's just weird that it goes from film noir to political thriller. I mean, I guess it's not that weird because a lot of film noirs start on, conspiracies or cover-ups or scandals. It's just that, so for example, if you watch Chinatown, right, there's a water conspiracy that's going on, right, to enrich people in Los Angeles. But at the end of the movie, instead of that conspiracy blowing up and going public, it's just pointless because the rich people hide it and you know, they say, forget about it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Like, you can't do anything even though you have this knowledge.
It's a systemic problem, you know, a bit like EG
Right.
and Danny. It's kind of things for me. Richard, what?
Right,
Nothing
exactly.
happened. Yeah, nothing
exactly.
happens.
So like the whole thing about film noir is that
Town,
the corruption wins in film noir, right? And so the end of it is kind of a letdown. The thing about The Expanse is the corruption can't be hidden. And so because they discover, you know, this alien artifact that starts self-replicating basically, and so it changes the entire political landscape of the solar system. And so it's kind of like a different take on the result of a film noir style conspiracy, which I really enjoyed just as a kind of cool exercise. But it does become a political thriller, and it becomes extremely fucking good, especially in seasons 2 and 3, and is definitely worth your time. Like I said, all the characters outside of Holden are very interesting. They have super different backgrounds, super different motivations. They're all in the ship together, so you get to see those, you know, like, you know, I love Amos, I love Bobby, like the female Martian Marine is a super cool character. Yeah, I think I really enjoy that series. I really enjoy that series. The acting outside of Stephen Strait is really good. If you can get past the first season, I mean, like I said, you might enjoy the first season like me. If you don't, it's worth soldiering through it so you can get to the super good parts of the show later on.
By the way, the worst part of the Stephen Strait actor is he acts every scene like this, like he's been on the freeze pipe. It's like,
yeah, he like squints a lot.
Like,
it's really fast.
It's like, bro, you don't have any range. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's one of those. It's one of those chicken and the egg things where I'm not actually sure he's a bad actor because the character is so bad and so boring that what do you even like? What would a good actor do with that role?
Is that one you're interested in reading? Do people say they're good?
Nah. I mean, so I might. People do say they're good. They were very much inspired by Game of Thrones. So it's actually two guys who write under a pseudonym. So there's two authors that collaborate, and I think they write different character viewpoints. But it's constructed like Game of Thrones, where it's very deliberately like Game of Thrones, where it's from one character's viewpoint to another character's viewpoint. And the reason why they had to stop the show is because there's a time jump of 20 years at the end of the show, like the book that the show ends on. And so how do you do that with the same pool of actors without recasting everything? And also I think it was kind of a niche show, but super good. I really enjoyed that show. On past episodes of By the Numbers, Rich and Thorin were asked if they knew a generally smart and erudite CSGO pros, to which they came up with Kerrigan, who has a master's degree and is generally very introspective about life. Are there any League of Legends pros who are not only good at clicking mouse buttons, but also smart outside the rift? I mean, Bjergsen, I think, is one of them. Like, legitimately, that guy reads a ton, is super curious. Like, one of the things he said upon his retirement was that he didn't have the kind of time to have a normal early 20s. Like, I think he will go back to college. Whenever I talk to Bjergsen, we never talk about League of Legends. We talk about philosophy and books and, you know, anything, intellectual curiosity outside of it. So I think Bjergsen is certainly one of those players.
I mean, the obvious example would be Faker, since actually he ironically said he was learning English like for fun. He doesn't even speak in English to anyone, just doing it for fun. Like,
yes.
Fuck, okay. All right, bro.
Yeah. I've been watching and reading lately some stuff about artificial intelligence, and I stumbled upon an interesting blog post titled Meditations on Moloch by Scott Alexander, which is essentially about the concept of the race to the bottom that promotes unhealthy competition at the expense of the bigger picture. Having that concept in mind, do you think that further developing AI is a good idea, or can it eventually prove itself to be a serious problem? Well, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this. What I will say is that any attempt to regulate artificial intelligence, when it's such a clearly important technology for the future, is going to be a fool's errand, because there's always going to be somebody who is going to cut corners in order to do it faster, right? We can't control what the Chinese government is going to allow. We can't control what, you know, potentially people, a company who moves very specifically, you know, there's going to be some country out there that doesn't want to put restrictions on things, and a company will be created within that country's borders in order to do this faster. It's scary. Like, it could be very scary, but there's no stopping it. And I don't think there's really going to be regulation on it either. Not serious regulation.
There's a saying in the occult the dabblers get fucked. So I don't think anyone should interact with AI. I think it is essentially, I say essentially just as like do a lot of heavy lifting there, I think it's demonology. So basically, the reason why I would say I find it very sinister is they claim, like crypto, Monty, oh, it's going to do all these things amazing and you better get in now. But then you sit back and nothing's happening. No one is like revolutionizing the world doing all these things. But here's the real message of what they want you to do. They want every single human to interact with crypto and AI. That seems to be the central message. It's not that someone will do it, it'll do your whole, it's like, you better get in now. You better get this one now and install it on your PC and here's a free one and start asking it questions, asking about yourself. Like, I think it's the digital Ouija board. I'm not fucking with it at all.
Yeah, it does seem, but there's also just no stopping it at this point in time. Like I said, the research is going to continue.
There is. The Amish have got the secret, mate. Disconnect. Build a barn. Chop the lines. There you go. All I'm going to say is this, boys. I used to laugh at the Amish too. Think about the last 4 years. They've been chilling. No problems at all. Having a great fucking time. Same life for them. All I'm going to say is, yeah, they've sort of proven the efficacy of their lifestyle, mate. You don't have to agree with it, but it did work.
It did work. Also, after they do the Rumspringa where they let people go into normal society, almost all of them come back, choose to come back.
That's pretty interesting too, yeah.
Here's what I think is so cool about the Amish.
Shows you, by the way, that you don't have to believe in the religion. That shows that family and community is the most central thing to a human's life to me. That's what they actually must learn from that.
And what I love about the Amish is that they don't create, cultures of fear or the expectation. Like a lot of cults will say, well, you'll lose you'll be an outcast. That's not what they do. They're like, all right, just go do your stuff. We'll always be here. Goodbye. You can come back if you want. So they don't create that same fear, which I think is great.
Basically prodigal son vibes in it.
Yep. Assuming the 4 world seeds from LPL and LCK will be the current top 4. So JDG, BLG, Top, Esports, LNG, Gen G, KT, D+, and T1 with Faker back. Which team do you see as the least patch/meta resistant and the highest risk of not making it to the knockout stage?
I mean, I do think in a world, because at the moment BLG is really good, in a world where like the game just wasn't at all about ADC, I think they would be way worse.
Yeah.
There's one for you.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't even that good now, so I don't even know why we're even including them, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, D plus is probably the answer, because like if you go into like a pure tank jungler meta, I don't really know how D plus wins games. KT could be an interesting one because we haven't seen. We've seen some depth to KT, but they're mostly playing by the same kind of supportive mid laner playbook plus Azir right now, but we know BDD from his history can play a variety of different things, and it seems to be working for them. Maybe LNG, because they have some like a carry top meta for LNG would probably be pretty bad, whereas like BLG could probably handle that one. A carry top laner for Gen G would also carry top meta for Gen G would also be pretty shit. That'd be pretty shit. So there's a few for you. There's a general perception that since players get mechanically better over time, great teams now are also better than great teams of the past. Well, it's true just from an evolution of tactics as well. However, with Riot simplifying the macro of the game over the years, do you think that the top teams of recent years have a better macro understanding than the teams of the past? Yes.
Nah.
I mean, that's unquestionable.
Nah.
You don't?
Put it this way, I'll just make it simple for you. We'll just use LEC, right? If I take last split, Monty, Mad Lions and BDS, do they understand macro in League better than G2 2019?
I guess it depends on what you mean by macro. I think what was interesting about G2 was that they came up with very creative compositions and win conditions. So if you are talking about compositional analysis and knowing how to play out weird situations that you create, then yeah, I think G2 is one of the best macro teams of all time, in fact.
Like, I see this still in CSGO. They say the same thing about CSGO because it's a religious mantra, like all of culture, built around the idea that progress continually happens and everything gets better. It's one of the most stupid ideas ever. Look at architecture, look at music, look at spirituality, look at family. These have all degraded and regressed, you fools. So what I would say is this. When I actually look, one of the great things, it's why we had that whole discussion about Faker or Xiaohu or Hai, is if you're a mega veteran who deeply understands, like, not the meta, the core principles principles of how the game plays out. You see this with Perks for sidelaning and flanking and coming in for winning plays in past years. They can take that for years beyond they're the best player. Meanwhile, the new hotshot mid laner, yeah, he might be sick at playing Silas, but does he actually know how to do that? Did Vethio know that? No, he doesn't have that understanding yet. So I also think it depends where we're capping it. Like, if we're talking about just the top teams, like the greatest team now, in theory, JDG probably should know more than like RNG of 2018. That's okay. But if we're talking like the idea that like they do that thing they do in basketball, like if you sent a bench player back now, he would be the MVP in 1960. Would he? Fuck. In the NBA, no, he wouldn't. He absolutely would not, mate. So I don't think it's not like, here's the thing, everyone doesn't get the knowledge. A bit of it disperses out through coaches and playing against that. But I think essentially truly great players, yeah, probably do take that knowledge and build on the shoulders of giants. But like, for example, that's why I give the Mad Lions BDS one, because they're not the truly great teams of all time. So to me, they wouldn't be as good as G2.
Yeah, but at the same time, things like vertical jungling in the past that were innovative, now anybody can do in solo queue that wasn't being done at the time, right?
So there have been anyone can do it. People still fucking up all the time.
Sure, but the concepts, there are some like macro concepts that anybody can do now.
Do you remember the two greatest players of LCS last split? Doublelift traded a minion for the game, and the year before, Bjergsen traded a fucking like a kill for like the entire, or like the base race or something for the entire game as well. Like he lost like a whole thing off. Like these are two of the most veteran players ever. So where's that? If anything, their launch went backwards. They got stupider. They regressed. Probably drinking too much tap water in America. Based.
Would you ever do a retrospective of Samsung Blue? I think they are possibly a top 10 team of all time, but are completely forgotten compared to other teams of the era. I think, well, what's wild about Samsung Blue was that their legacy has been erased because Samsung White won Worlds, even though Samsung Blue can continuously beat Samsung White in best of fives for most of 2014 and was the better team for most of 2014. And also did immensely well with Dade in the mid lane. Think about that. Dade and Deft, after Dade and Pawn swapped on the teams, they created this juggernaut that really was one of the best late game team fighting and macro teams. Yeah, they had flaws, like the laning phase, especially in bot lane, often went disastrously for Samsung Blue, but they were one of the best teams of all time at playing from a deficit. People just don't remember them because they didn't care about their championship title in spring, and they got buried by Samsung White being so incredibly fucking glorious at the World Championship that year. But yeah, I think they were really good.
The real problem I have has always been this. I wish they'd be on the other side of the bracket. Would they have been in the final?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Differently? Yeah, I'd like to see
the answer is definitely yes, by the way.
Another team that's a victim of an audible limb.
Yep. What do you think about Joel Cohen's Macbeth with Denzel Washington? I haven't actually seen that one. Which was the last version of Macbeth that I saw? The one with Michael Fassbender I saw and I thought was really good. But I have not seen that version of Macbeth yet, but I do want to watch that one. So the answer is...
I don't care at all about Shakespeare. If I start a Shakespeare movie and they actually speak with the Shakespeare, I turn off. It's over.
I adore Shakespeare. Thoughts on The Wall by
season 1.
And The Expanse season.
Just weighing it up, just giving all the full picture.
Okay. Thoughts on The Wall by Pink Floyd.
Mega. One of the best concept albums ever.
Yep. That's definitely up Thorin's alley.
I'll probably do a video on my side channel about this one day. What's funny is what I like about Pink Floyd, as always, is what everyone else hates. They hate that Roger Waters sort of took over the band and started doing it all himself, because famously On the Wall and then going on, he supposedly just wrote most of it and then he just brought them in to do the instruments instead of letting them properly have their creative freedom. But if you know me, I'm on some Howard Rock shit, aren't I? I don't think it should be a fucking commie world where we're all just input equal ideas and fuck everything up by committee. I actually think Roger Waters was brilliant. I think the final cut's great. I think essentially for me, he was the favourite person in the band, so I love The Wall. I think it's mega. And the movie's pretty good too. It's a musical, obviously, but it's pretty good.
Listening to the Best Damn League Show episode with CL got me thinking, could there be a parallel between LEC's arguably all-time low collective strength and their new format, which prioritizes high performance every game over high learning? No.
The weirdest part about that to me was this. I think it's actually a bullshit argument. Spoiler, they used to say when it was LEC and it ran 9 weeks, that you've got to just practice for this next BO1, you've got to win these 2 BO1s this week. It was the same shit. He complained because he's on a team that could finish 9th and 10th, guys. Think it through. Why does no one on G2 and Fnatic complain? Because they're just fucking loving it, aren't they? Get rid of the shitters and we just get on one of the BO1s in 3 weeks. Like, I don't even think it's true. The number one problem of all Western teams is they don't play for improvement and fundamental level up. They just play to win the game. That's it. You guys even tell me every time, well, why would they improve? They can already beat their region. As I told you, don't say that to me. I am someone who's shadow boxed against myself and the greats. Like, I'm not trying to be fucking just do what Fion does. Spoiler, no one even remembers Fion now. I'm still here.
There was a world where the 2020 DRX had Khan and Kanavi instead of Doran and Pioshik, which apparently fell through due to Sword suing CV Max. Is that true? Okay. How much do you think that roster would have accomplished?
I mean, that would be a fucking amazing roster if you don't remember. Like, obviously, that had Kerry on it, had fucking Def, Chovy. That would be like one of the all-time great rosters potentially.
Yeah, could have been really good, especially with those players at that point in time.
And that's even my theory, because I actually do think what fucks the guys, I said it before, like the equivalent between CSGO and Valorant, and how in the modern day you have to take chances in League instead of trying to minimize mistakes, which is the Korean approach. My opinion is this: if you really want Korea to beat China and be number one again, here's what you need. Give CV Max whatever roster he wants, because I think that guy is a fucking genius, mate. Think of the players he's scouted. He's got an amazing mind for the game.
He's even doing well now with Kwangdong. Another group of rookies. Doing pretty well. If Riot removed all the band-aids from League, like top tower armor, plates, support jungle item taxes, what would the meta look like? I mean, it would be more exciting to watch because it would be less like solo queue. They just have taken away the creativity that pro players are able to have. Like the whole top tower durability changes to prevent role swaps prevented a lot of creativity. People didn't like it because it didn't look like solo queue and because it was a PvE race a lot of the time. But it was an evolving meta, and it did allow for greater champion diversity, in my opinion. And it led to more interesting and unique mid and late game states from a macro perspective. Remember, I was the one who liked lane swaps. But you didn't. And everybody complained, and Riot was like, this game's too weird for the average person to watch. Let's make it more boring.
And also, let's be real, there is a world where you can argue that there would be a lot of games that you wouldn't like. Like, spoiler, my boy Froggen would just scale for 55 minutes while not being ganked, wouldn't he? And then try and win a game with like fucking 6-item Cogmore, like the most damage of all time. You know what I mean? He'd had like 3 fucking death caps or something like that. Yeah, he would just go mental, wouldn't he? Like, some of that you wouldn't like. You wouldn't like it. I would. I wouldn't give a shit, would I?
Who is the biggest underachiever in LoL and esports history? Underachiever. I mean, Dade has to be up there relative to his peaks. It's really depressing.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, his international performances were mostly disastrous. I guess 2014 Worlds he did okay, but 2013 Worlds, famously, that's where the Dade Award came from. But especially because he faded out relatively quickly, despite being arguably the best mid laner in the world at points in time in 2014. It is disappointing to see how his career ended up.
I mean, if we're talking only when he says underachiever, not like the idea they didn't play well, but they didn't win the championships. Actually, Rookie's got to be in there. Dude, his actual trophy cabinet's fucking whack compared to how good he was. Like,
yeah,
this guy could have won it all.
Not because of his own doing.
No, he did fine. That's just the way the game is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the saddest thing about team games.
He's like Dan Marino, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you even a modern day example. Look, he wasn't as great as these people, but he was always above average. Matthew Stafford was always an above average quarterback. But because he played for the Lions, people act like he was a bomb. Dude, did you even see when he won the Super Bowl, like a no-look pass? What are you talking about? The guy was always really good. He just wasn't like the absolute best, but he was way better than people give him credit for. So that's the sad thing about team sports. You can cap you.
And now he probably wishes he was on the Lions again. Tragic. He did get the ring, though, so good for him. How much preparation goes into making an episode of Summoning Insight besides guest booking, watching games, working with sponsors? You guys make creating this amazing content look easy and organic when it is anything but.
I don't think anything goes into it, does it? We just turn up and turn the cameras on.
Also, I love this version of Thorne absolutely disemboweling Frankie in Double Lift. We all do. It's great. Great entertainment. I mean, when we talk about creating an episode of Summoning Insight, obviously, you know, Andrew, our producer at slash everything guy at LFN, you know, he's doing a lot of work making sure we have the right ad reads up. You know, first off, we work a lot with agencies or with the sponsors in order to get these deals done. Shout out to Trolley, our most recent sponsor on BDLS and Power Spike. Love that. You know, Liquid IV, Freeze Pipe. Thank you to all of those people, Esports Bet, that have come in. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work on that side, on the business side, to get this stuff done. When it comes to Summoning Insight, I mean, I am watching a fuck ton of VODs every week. And yes, it's not just work for Summoning Insight. It's work for Monty and Wolf. It's work for Power Spike. Unfortunately, due to my kind of fragmented schedule, it's difficult for me to stream because I don't have, you know, 4-hour blocks where I don't have business meetings, basically, or other obligations and things to do. So mostly it's just a lot of research, you know, me looking at stats. But when it comes to the actual show, yeah, we basically just show up, turn the cameras on, and talk about what happened. We don't really plan out the show in any way.
We have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. Yes. So all about reps
the actual making of the show is easy. The research and preparation to put the show together is the more difficult part. It's like, keeping up with everything.
People used to ask the same thing about By the Numbers. Like, how do you do a show like that? You are aware that literally that was me and Richard Lewis's life, is to watch the games, watch this, know what's going on.
Exactly.
Like essentially, this is just like a fucking byproduct of what we're doing anyway.
Correct. Now, it was obviously, if you can double up like Dom does with streaming, that's the ideal way to do it. And I wish I could do more of that these days, but unfortunately, the reality of trying to get LFN together, which is my more important goal, means that a lot of the research and stuff has to happen off camera. But hopefully, that will change in the future. Which legacy NA or EU players do you think could have had a better career in Asia than their career in the West? Maybe Huni. He did have a temporary, you know, run on T1, obviously.
Like the obvious one, it feels like, is Impact, right? He could still have played at world-class level. And he could have been, I don't know if he will win Worlds, but he could have been up there in the big international tournaments way more, I feel like.
I mean, Bo, without scandal, probably could have done more in the LPL to this point in time that he's doing right now.
An obvious one's Piglet. It was never talent. This guy's a very talented player. He just had a weird attitude, didn't he? So I think he could have done way more too.
Yeah, it's mostly going to be Korean or Chinese players that went to the West. Just because there would have been, I mean, Double Lift might have been able to do more in China. Who will ever know? Does it bother you that in team sports, some all-time great players never managed to win the big one? Thinking back, I cringe at the fact that Score never managed to win Worlds, but fucking Pioshik is a world champion, or that Nico never won a major, but Norbert did.
Was it for all games, he said, or was it just League?
Oh, for all games. I mean, you mentioned Nico for CS. I don't really care that much because it doesn't affect my enjoyment of that player or my ability to look at their play, you know, but you have to enjoy all the idiots
telling you
that's the worst part. That's the worst part.
It's
the nephews. It's the nephews that are the worst part. It's not my own personal enjoyment that is affected by it. It's mostly just idiots telling me that they weren't good.
I mean, I've got lots of classics, and I'll give you, these are all people who in their game could have won the World Championship. So in League, you've got like Froggen, Flame, Name. These are good ones. Obviously, my boy Existence in CSGO. I also wish Nico had won one. Guardian's a great one. I wish he'd been able to get one at some point in time. These are just tragic that they didn't win. Yeah. Like, these are way better than most of the people who did win at their prime.
I mean, Score is obviously, because he's my favorite player, is one that I am sad about, but there's still a chance
for Worlds.
Yeah, there's still a chance he can win as coach. Still that chance going. So perhaps that will
people
happen.
Now will never understand how good Smeb was because he didn't win Worlds. Like, brilliant, thanks. Fuck off, nephew.
If LoL drops the constant patching and left the game alone for years at a time, do you think real counters to things like Zeri, Yuumi, when they were at the height of pick ban, would be found, leading to meta shifting on its own? Yes, we found
how many champions there are.
Yeah, look how many champions there are, guys. People would experiment with new things. We literally have seen this in Brood War. Okay, we know that things that were considered extremely powerful in Brood War, especially when Terran was at the peak of their powers, people found ways to beat it.
And people would find stuff like they'd find some weird angle when they'd run the math on, like, because Power of Evil's done this before, where you just find some like item build or like rune set that actually no one uses, but actually it's like really good for one specific thing, and suddenly you can split push with it. You know, like there's always some angle like that you can come up with, I think.
Yeah, and when things are the same for a long period of time, you have more chance to really dive deep. If you're constantly trying to play catch up to the latest patch notes and figuring out what's the strongest and easiest thing to do immediately, that's when it leads to a lot of stagnant play. But average players like that, because they don't want to wait months or potentially even years for people to find the alternative. But we literally know what happened because Brood War stopped patching in 99. And so, to be fair, at least in StarCraft, there were things that tournaments could do because the map makers were the main way of balancing the game. So there were other levers to pull in terms of the metagame and balance in StarCraft. So it's not exactly a one-to-one. But I do think that people can be creative. I do think that the meta will evolve regardless of patches or not. What is your take on creators copying other creators' content? I don't know if it's just me, but Travis Gafford's blatant ripoff of LEC's pop quiz always rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, what is
a weird take?
What has Travis ever done that was original, guys?
No, but the thing that's weird about that is this, Monty. All they did is a concept that exists in other games and other things. They didn't invent a pop quiz. And the reason why I actually like that he does it, I don't watch it, is because no one does it in LCS. So he does like an unofficial version of it. I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. Like, that would be like saying that like someone invented the concept of having like a fucking game show or something. They didn't. So I picked something different. I do think when they did stuff like people ripped off like Overly's morning show, that was a bit too on the nose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you obviously only did that because they did it. So look, Travis has definitely ripped off some stuff, but I don't think that was not even that egregious, mate. Here's one thing people forget. He's not Jake Lucky. Like, he does add something to the community by doing that pop quiz. Like, if you want to see LCS pros answer the question, he's done it for you. So look, hate on him for the things worth hating on him for. That's just whatever. He's doing a good job there.
Yeah. I'm sure it's the rest of the questions. I'm sure at some point Travis gave credit, but something about how he made a joke of calling it surprise test felt really insidious as he tries to appear harmless and make a meme out of blatant copying.
Oh, you can't win. If he called it pop quiz, you'd go mental. He called it pop quiz, so now he can't win at all, guys. You set up an impossible scenario.
What should the etiquette be for copying content? Well, I don't, like I said, I don't think this is particularly innovative. To me, the most egregious thing that Travis does is that his entire existence is him making other people make content for him. When has Travis ever had a unique thought or an opinion that was respectable or interesting? All he does is interview players, do pop quizzes where other people provide the content, run a talk show where other people call in and provide the content, or his guests provide the content, or put Mark Z's content on his channel. Can we have... he also breaks news despite repeatedly not calling himself a journalist, yet over time does more and more journalistic work.
He breaks it like this, like, guys, I heard this, and it's like he just heard that 10 minutes earlier by one guy. Quick, get the video out, and that's why he even thought, obviously I don't know the details. Like, no, my problem is this. You can't, in my opinion, you can't steal ideas. Like, an idea, if you take it and you do a good job with it, then in some sense you understood it and you made it work.
There are no original ideas, by the way. It's all about execution.
You can steal content. If you ever take a clip of mine and just put it on YouTube, I will copyright your whole channel. That's it. Game over.
Yeah, and it's just about execution. I think the problem with the surprise test is that there's not unique execution with Travis. There's nothing fun. Like, anybody could do what Travis is doing. You could literally... The problem with Travis is you can replace Travis. You can replace Travis with any other person, and the content is identical.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Who's the person competing with Travis trying to do that in LCS?
Well, Degon's doing it now in terms of actual interview content. And I think his content's better.
Well, let him do a pop quiz then. Then we'll see if he can actually compete. Go on then. Fucking open up for me.
Yeah, maybe. I think Thorin may have made the comparison once or twice, but I've rarely seen anyone make the comparison between 2019 and 2020 G2 and the OG C9. What are your thoughts on this comparison? As a fan of both teams, G2 really felt like they had the best qualities of that high-led C9 with better quality players.
I mean, I think in the sense of like they could always come from behind and they could sort of like find their way creative,
or had like a unique in on the game that made them difficult to defeat because they played the game in their own style, I guess. Because like objectively, they're pretty different teams.
I mean, for start of G2 is just way better in context and objectively in all senses than the other team. But they both had a unique quality, sure.
Yeah, they also had very different strengths, you know, and players that were like which players were carrying the team. You know, the limitations of highest champion pool and mechanics made C9 work in a really weird way, but it was overcome with his shot calling abilities, right? And his ability to prop up Meteos in the jungle. So I guess the similarities are that they both overperformed relative to their region because they played unique game styles that other teams, especially internationally, were not necessarily prepared for.
Also, fuck everyone in the West wanting to hear about Cloud9 from 2014. I did an article series in 2014 for On Gamers where I watched every single Cloud9 game and then wrote a 3-part massive article series and everyone downvoted it on Reddit. So go suck my dick. There you go. I did it all. I said everything I need to say, but you didn't see it, did you, fuckface? So see ya. Downvote this video on Reddit, you twat.
Oh, they will. Don't worry. Do you think that overly analyzing / dissecting a book can take away from the enjoyment of reading it? No.
I mean, I just don't do that. Like, what I do is I enjoy the book, and then later I might think back on it or think of some angle. I'm not in the moment going, stop, like, what's going on here? If it's a good book, I'm just enjoying the story, you know.
I have an absolutely crazy ability to live in the moment in fiction, which is why that spoilers don't bother me, because I literally will just forget the spoilers while I'm enjoying the piece of fiction. And to me, it's all about the execution of an idea, not that a twist happens. It matters how it happens. So I can actually just completely disassociate from analysis or knowledge and then come back and apply it later on, as Thorn is saying. With Rashidan's Street Fighter 6 being able for play 1 week before the Capcom Pro Tour adjacent EVO this year, the ruling for this has basically been found on a fan website on a dude trust me bro basis, okay? Do we finally conclude that all game developers will prioritize their own bottom line first and foremost over competitive integrity with no exceptions? Yes, because they have a different motivation. Their motivation is to sell you Rashid, which is an expansion character for Street Fighter 6. And so they want him to be broken, and they want to disrupt and have him be present within
basically
the latest.
Yumi and Zeri, then.
Yeah, no, it's the same shit. It's like Riot wants to have their new champions be powerful because it sells more of those champions, and they don't care about it as an entertainment product, even when Zeri is fucking horrible for the pro meta.
There you go. I think you answered it.
Yep.
I don't know anything about Street Fighter others, I don't care.
On Nerd Legion, you said Emilia Clarke and Jon Snow are bad actors. Well, it's Kit Harington.
Jon Snow wasn't the actor, but yeah, whatever. It may as well be Jon Snow, right?
It may as well be. They are bad actors.
Get ready, a common defense. Tell us they're not, though, right? Come on.
No. A common defense is she fits the part of acting like a teen or poker ice broody face young adult. So it's supposed to be bad in a good way. Dude, you could act better as a teenager than she did. How does one tell bad acting from good acting without acting experience and knowledge? Comparing their acting to the Lannisters' acting seems weird when it's different. Well, first off, I actually spent 15 years acting on stage and have done over 30 live theatrical productions in my life. So I am an actor.
Also, in season 4, you pretended to be the coach of CLG, even though
I was really good at it.
Behind the scenes, it was fake. You even did it in documentaries and on camera. You came to the LCS, and it turned out the whole time it was just Link and Doublelift saying press R on Sivir. That was all it was.
Yeah. It's too bad they couldn't figure out how to select
It was like a method role. You were like Daniel Day-Lewis. You really embodied that role, lived it. The trick is Monty's so like Daniel Day-Lewis. You know how famous he on
I even fooled Reginald.
You know, on set, he doesn't ever break character. Well, even when I went to Korea and heard him coaching CLG, that was just for me. That was the show to win me over to the whole scam.
Yeah, my mic wasn't even plugged into the computer. That was the whole thing. It was all a ruse. Well, look, just take Daenerys's role and tell me if this is an interesting character. She is married to what is supposed to be basically a Mongol leader, right? Forcibly, basically. And she undergoes great tragedy, becomes maybe the most powerful person in that entire world due to her dragons. She goes and disrupts old methods of power through what appear to be somewhat, at least, noble intentions initially, and gets tangled in this love relationship with a secret noble from her own family. Like, that is an interesting character. Now, you tell me if Emilia Clarke was interesting in that series or had nothing to work with as an actress, and yet she is repeatedly the most boring person in all of the scenes that she's in.
For me, the answer is simple. Like, it's basically this. All these questions always come back to the same thing. They don't trust themselves, Monty. They don't trust their instincts. You sharpen them over time. Like, by the way, just amount of reps and experience is one of the reasons. Like, I'm not an actor, but I've seen a bazillion movies, haven't I? And then if I like an actor, I watch, like I'll give you a classic old school one. It's an old school shout now, but modern day people are never going to watch him. If you want to see a really good actor from a very old time period in movies that otherwise won't hold up, it's James Cagney. He's fucking phenomenal, mate. He just leaps off the screen. When you watch people like him and Humphrey Bogart, you'll just be like, everyone else is a cardboard cow. He's a real fucking...
Or Marlon Brando.
He's an actor now that could be in a movie today, but he's in 160. So essentially, you'll just learn, you'll pick up intuitively what it is that they're doing that works.
Look, all you have to, if you want to know good acting versus bad acting, go watch Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, the Tennessee Williams play. It's a very famous play. Watch how Marlon Brando acts in that movie compared to everyone else who is so fucking wooden. And he is absolutely crushing it in some of these scenes. Watch the scene where Marlon Brando is eating this chicken. He is eating this chicken, just eating chicken. He is out acting the other actors at this table in such a crazy way. It's almost unbelievable. It's like they are, it's like they are in two different universes. So it's easy to tell. Like, I mean, everybody knows like Daniel Day-Lewis is fucking amazing, right? Look at all of the different parts. The
example for that one is Gangs of New York's not a good movie. He's unbelievable.
I hate that movie. I think the movie is dog shit. I actually don't like Scorsese very much, but he is incredible in that movie. He is incredible.
Also, like, it's another... Like, I've always thought a good shout as well is, right, when Mickey Rourke in the 80s got blacklisted for a bunch of shit he did in Hollywood, I watched all the, like, bad independent movies he made in the 80s. He's mega in most of them. The movies is shit. Like, the story's crap, the other actors are bad, no special effects budget. Loads of these roles, he just nails them. Like, there's even one where he plays sort of like a mentally deficient type character. He's fucking unbelievable at that. Oh, there's so many good movies.
Yeah. Also, in Emilia Clarke's case, I'm now watching her in Secret Invasion, which is like not very interesting, and she doesn't have facial expressions, guys. Why does she never have facial expressions in any of her roles? Like, she's not even moving her face. Whatever. Who do you feel is the guest on any of your content that you have been the most able to bring out their best? That's an interesting question.
I mean, as I've told people, one of the secrets is a lot of the best talk shows. It's like, I've already talked to that person so many times over the years. Essentially, I know what story could come next and I cue them up or I give them a little prod and see if it'll come out. So I'm trying to think of some good ones. Because the best ones usually are the ones where they didn't do that much stuff publicly otherwise. So maybe like, let me think. It was like a really good one. I'm trying to think of someone who's quite quiet. I'm pretty swear. I'll tell you this right now. Even though I'll never work with him again because he is a traitorous Judas Iscariot piece of shit who actually sold out his friend and everyone gay who lives in Korea for the sake of T1 fans. I used to think, go watch any show I ever did with Bwipo, and I made him twice as interesting, mate, because he's another motherfucker that's really interesting, but he loves the sound of his own voice and the sentence never ends and he keeps going and he kills you. Whereas if you notice, people don't like it, Monty, but if I know it's getting boring and you're saying the same thing, I just jump in. I don't care about being the villain. I'm willing to be the guy who's like, what the hell with the steel chair? Like, I do it. So I always thought I was able to keep in on really interesting abstract topics and going into deep stuff. And he would hint at stuff about teammates, even though behind the scenes he was way spicier. But there's one for you. There's one from the archives.
Bwipo is very thoughtful, but you have to keep him on rails. You have to guide him in those conversations, and he's really good. I asked specifically about the Hold Steady last week. Other favorite bands / albums from your life outside of classical that you guys enjoy?
We'll just pick some random ones in, yeah.
Sure. Favorite band / albums?
I can't do favorite band. There's just too many. But like, if I just give you a few, like, here's some. I'll just pick some that you won't have heard before. So, like, I'm a big fan of that group, the Cinematic Orchestra, and they did an amazing soundtrack to a documentary Disney did about flamingos. So it's called like the Pink Flamingos or something. Cinematic Orchestra. Look at it. It's some of the most amazing music you'll ever hear. It's orchestral. They used a full even though the name Cinematic Orchestra just usually was a meme, they were actually just like a band, a jazz band. On this one, they actually used a full orchestra. It's absolutely unbelievable. Also, I'm a big fan of the post-rock genre. So I would say a really good one there is I like the one called Those Who Tell the Truth Shall Die, Those Who Tell the Truth Shall Live Forever by Explosions in the Sky. It's amazing, like Texas bass where they've all got 3 guitars and they do all super long, like, and quiet, 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 and then loud, 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 and then quiet, and quiet, quiet, and loud, 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 loud. It's really good. It's mega. All the tracks, they've got all the emotion in there, all the rest of it. And I'll just give you a random last one, drum and bass. If you want one of the all-time bangers, even though this isn't that obscure, if you don't know drum and bass, though, definitely go check this out. Calix and TB, Anatomy, because essentially it was 2 of the best ever drum and bass producers got together and did an album where they made almost every track could be like a single. It could be like the highlight one. So it was just 2 of the absolute best combine and try to go like 10 out of 10 on the album. No filler, no like side project. No, like, this is for my grandmother who died of cancer. Like, everything's just like, here's a 10 out of 10 motherfucker. And just one of the best drum and bass albums ever.
All right, here we go. Here is a list of some albums. Brown Bird, they were actually a husband and wife folk duo, and he unfortunately died of leukemia, but they produced some beautiful music in the late 2000s / early 2010s. Brown Bird's Salt for Salt is an amazing album. I would go with, let's see here. I'm going to hit a wide variety of genres. V&V Nation, which I've talked about before on the show, love their lyrics, love their music. Their album Future Perfect is probably my favorite one that they've done. I would say if you want more classic rock, I would take classic sounding rock, I would say. I would take the Gaslight Anthem and either take the 59 Sound or American Slang. All the rest of their music is not my favorite, but those 2 albums in particular I think are quite good. One of my favorite albums of all time is a jazz album. Simply the names of the artists, John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. It was made in the 60s. It contains some of the kind of most iconic vocal jazz tracks with absolutely amazing musicians behind it. It's absolutely great. Let's see here. What else do we got? I would say if you want more jazz, vocal jazz, Melody Gardot's My One and Only Thrill is an all-time favorite of mine. Hip hop, Run the Jewels 2. Love Run the Jewels, especially like that second album. I think it's the best one that they've released. AC/DC, Back in Black, all-time great. Every song on that is a total banger. Folk music, Nico Case, Middle Cyclone, insanely good female artist. Going back to some music that people might not like that much, if you're not super into it, I would say I'm a big early AFI fan. I do not like AFI's more recent albums, actually any album in the past 15 years, I would say. But Black Sails in the Sunset, one of their early albums, is a great one. Gogo Bordello, Super Taranta, Gypsy Punk, one of my all-time favorites, and Flogging Molly, Swagger. There you go.
I'll give you 4 more. So I would do the Burial, Truant.
That one's
EP.
great. That is,
So,
yeah.
No, not the album. I'm doing an EP for this one. Truant EP,
okay.
which is one of the later releases. Even though it's an EP, spoiler, he just changed his style. Like, what he would do is he'd do 3 tracks, but they're like 15 minutes each. Well, spoiler, if you did 3-minute track, that's an album. He just called it an EP. Then I would do Over the Shadows of the Sun, which is more like a sort of, they tried to do like almost like a Gregorian triangle. You have to look it up. It's very unique. The Cure, Pornography, probably their best album. It's not at all poppy. It's all sort of like, well, it's part of the Dark Trilogy, if people know that. And then the last one, to make it funny, you probably never heard of this. It's this really obscure American sort of rock metal band. And the thing is, hasn't even got any tracks that you'd have heard of. It's called Metallica, and it's called Metallica. If you can look that one up. Some people call it self-titled or the Black Album. I never heard of that one though, guys. So don't worry about that.
It's interesting you picked the Black Album.
I think it's
a lot
the
of
best
people.
one.
I agree with you, but a lot of people like to be hipsters and
Yeah, they
take,
try to be like that's when
Masters
it went
of Puppets
downhill.
or,
I think it's amazing, mate. That's like one. That's what I told you. I'm not a poser. If someone really knocks out like me, I could listen to the first like 7 tracks of that. Never skip anything. Just it's fucking unbelievable though. So yeah, I don't have to be like I'm picking the obscure one. Like that's just a fucking banger album.
Burial Untrue though is such a good album. Also, not the one you picked, but that album is fucking great. Yeah, I mean, those are just some off the top of my head. Obviously,
all right, next question.
We can go deeper next time. Can you all make a Cheeks trophy for managers like rogues who absolutely repeatedly devastated a lineup? Deliver that ass to their door, front door photos at all. Just a butt cheeks trophy would be funny. Maybe when we have more money to do that kind of thing, we can.
That thing is though, we'd have to be fair. Like even though I like Steve Arnett, you'd be winning a couple of these.
Exactly.
You'd have a couple.
I mean, look, it's just like the raspberries. Sometimes good actors or good actors, good directors, good writers. Sometimes you win an Oscar and you win a Razzie. You can't win them all. You know what I mean? Can't win them all. What was the guy who wrote Beautiful Mind, who won an Academy Award, also wrote Batman and Robin and won a Razzie,
really?
right?
Okay.
Yep. That was what's his name? He was doing. We were talking about him on because he does some of the stuff on the new Star Trek shows as well. But yeah, sometimes you just don't put out your best work.
Is it Akiva Goldsman?
Yeah, Akiva Goldsman. He's the Goldsman. He's the showrunner for Strange New Worlds.
Okay. Well, his thing. He's making it look like that was the exception of Beautiful Man at this point, isn't he? With some of this resume.
Yeah.
Then again, though, you have to understand, guys. Hollywood's like
Cinderella Man.
Hollywood's like it, which is an underrated movie. Hollywood's like esports. People also do just take a gig for the sake of having a job. Once you're in the industry, you just keep going, don't you?
Yeah. No, I think he's had an up and down career. Like Beautiful Mind is great. Cinderella Man was good. He wrote that, but he also
everyone forgets that movie though, mate. That's actually, if you like inspirational movies, it's a really great movie. And also, I think it's very well cast. Like the guy who plays the fucking, I can't remember his name now, the guy who plays like the villain boxer, he does a really great job too. The one who was killing people with like one punch and all that crap. He does a great job. That guy nails the role. And I just love Russell Crowe anytime he's in a good movie.
Yeah. I really wish they had just made more Master and Commander movies with him. That is one of my biggest desires in film
also,
history.
what tilts Semler? Semler literally a fan of those books. So he says,
he says I started reading those books too.
His dream is that Pirates of the Caribbean was never released, and so they just kept making those movies. There's about like 20 of them or something mental, isn't there?
Oh, there's 21 books.
There you go. There's loads.
Yeah, I started reading the series, and it is really good. They've actually been talking about
cast for that as well. That was really great. Paul Bettany killed it.
Oh yeah. They are allegedly thinking about making a prequel, but obviously that won't have Russell Crowe, so it'll depend on the casting of it. But honestly, if they stay true to the source material, then I think they could do very well. Honestly, the problem with the Master and Commander stuff is that historical epics just fell out of style. That was the biggest issue is that we kind of got into more like sci-fi and Marvel universe after that movie was released.
Get ready, because my boy Ridley Scott loves him. Is that Napoleon movie coming out?
I'm actually super hyped. Also, Joaquin Phoenix, fucking great casting for that role. That's going to be really interesting. I'm interested in that.
The only thing someone did point out on Twitter, and they're so right, is like, bro, you make a Napoleon biopic and you use like a shit rock cover of Radiohead instead of, those actual pieces of orchestral music written about Napoleon by some of the greatest composers of all time. Am I missing something? Movies are even about fucking those sorts of orchestral scores. What are you doing? Get the Radiohead cover off.
Yeah, including Beethoven's Symphony No. 3, which is about Napoleon. You literally have an entire Beethoven
Nailed
symphony.
it.
Just gonna put that out there. The Eroica. Anyway, that's the last question for this week. So thank you very much. We will be back next week with the conclusion of the LPL regular season. We are fast approaching playoffs in a variety of reasons. First round of the LEC. We will see you then.
Just watch the Game of Doc video.